What is up, everyone? Welcome back to some more Higurashi. What is potentially the end of this chapter? Maybe. Really feels like we're leading up to the end. In the previous recording session, Keiichi finally got the message that everyone's kind of out to get him. Not just the people in his class, everyone in the village. After a van nearly ran him over, they definitely tried their best. Then there was a very depressing altercation with Reina at Keiichi's place. And then the next day, Keiichi goes to school and pretty much openly challenges Mion, claiming that he knows everything, nothing's hidden. He knows everything that's going on, so if you want to fucking do something about it, go ahead and do something about it. And that's pretty much immediately where we pick up. He said Mion had like a demonic look in her eyes. She was looking all crazy and shit. So I'm very curious to see how the rest of this day plays out, quite honestly. Oh, I didn't click back into the game, my bad. Mion made up an excuse for her red eyes by saying there was something wrong with her contacts. Right, that was another thing, is like after we challenged her, or like, did our little declaration of war, she started crying. She seemed very emotional about it. She seemed, a lot more torn up about the situation than I had initially thought she would. Seems like there's a bit more humanity inside of her than I had assumed. After that, neither Reina nor Mion spoke to me for the rest of the day. Understandable. Neither Satoko nor Rika-chan looked me in the eye. Makes sense. Strangely, I didn't feel hurt. Everything had just went back to the way it was. The month since I transferred in had been almost too much fun. That was all. School was supposed to be something like this to begin with. I should have disliked that feeling. But today, it felt oddly refreshing. The bell rung, sounding the end of the monotonous school day, which had felt so tense, yet so dull. Since it would cause a lot of unpleasant memories if they asked me to join in the club activities, I'd probably start preparing to go home without even looking at them. I stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag, wrapped my hand around Satoshi's now familiar bat, and began heading towards the entrance. I was assailed by both the exhausting relief that nothing had happened today and the tiring possibility of the same thing repeating tomorrow. See, you say nothing happened today, but the day's not over. Your school day might be over, but the day's not over, buddy boy. But deep down inside me, far beneath in the recesses of my heart, achingly, I knew this would be the last day of this cycle. I couldn't tell how the ending would be, whether it would end as I wished it to end, or if it would end as I hoped it wouldn't. Regardless, in my current state, there was something more important than how things would end. There was something I wanted to know. Why did I have to be killed? How did it come to this? Why? For what purpose? The sunlight was relentless. The sun, the heat, even the air. It wouldn't give me my answers. Or could it be that the cries of the Higurashi were desperately trying to tell me something? Somewhere, mixed in with their shrieks, Tomitake-san and Satoshi were also probably trying to tell me something. I simply haven't been able to realize it yet. When I do realize it, I wonder if I'll be amongst the Higurashi fruitlessly crying next to the next victim. Glancing down at my feet, I saw Higurashi on its back, spasming weakly. Oh, is that foreshadowing? There was still much of the summer left, yet this one was already chirping its last song. I couldn't tell what it was saying, no matter how hard I listened. But I had to try. I had to try to listen to what it was desperately trying to tell me. At that moment, the shrills of the Higurashi ceased all at once. As if they'd held together, fearing that the person who brought them to their dreadful fate had arrived. There was no mistaking it. A presence was approaching. The sound of footsteps was almost non-existent. If the Higurashi hadn't warned me by ending their chirping, I wouldn't have noticed. Reina. My exhaustion left me in a heartbeat. What? Oh, okay. In its place was a rush of adrenaline that sharpened all my senses. I was just barely able to hold back that creeping, suffocating feeling of horror. It wasn't something I could hold back for long. But in this moment when I needed to be razor sharp, I was able to retain my composure. I wasn't going to shout like I did yesterday. I hid myself calmly amongst the trees, waiting for my pursuer's shadow. Could I get them to pass by me? No. Since I was able to hear their footsteps, they were probably also able to hear mine. They might have already been able to tell that I'd hidden myself and was holding my breath. The person tailing me, was it Reina? Just like yesterday? See, that's what I'm thinking, because he's mentioned like how quiet they're stepping, like, and that's the thing, we know Reina like can literally follow in Keiichi's shadow without him fucking knowing. If it was Reina, I wouldn't hold back. I could just yell at her and make her go ahead like yesterday. If it wasn't Reina, it would depend on how they acted, I guess. The footsteps ambled closer. I swallowed, wiped my clammy hands on my pants, and readjusted the grip on the bat. I could tell that the fear I had beaten back once was now waiting for another opening to come at me. Who could it be? Peeked out from behind the tree at the person following me. Yup. My imagination hadn't led me astray. It was Reina. There was a bit of relief as I realized it was someone I knew, but that feeling left me in an instant. This wasn't the same Reina that I knew. Her eyes were dark and lifeless, but her mouth appeared as if it was carved into a crescent. Yes, it looked like she was grinning slightly. And in her right hand was a hatchet. I hid myself behind the tree once again and recalled the unbelievable sight I just saw. What was that just now? The embodiment of terror laid bare. Baseball, practicing my swing, there were tons of excuses for me to be carrying a bat. But for that hatchet? There was no excuse for that. A hatchet. Just like that.
Keiichi-kun, かくれんぼかな?
My heart was pounding. Hard enough that I had trouble breathing. What little composure I had been able to hold on to was now crushed. In its place, cold sweat gushed forth, covering my entire body, letting me know precisely what kind of emotion had taken hold. Not good, not good, not good. I wasn't able to hide myself completely. She already knew I was here.
レナを驚かせようとしたのかな?
I decided that it would be better to reveal myself now, since there was still space between us, than to allow Reina to come any closer. Smart. I adjusted my grip on the bat again, readied myself mentally, and stepped out from behind the tree.
Keiichi-kun, 見つけた.
Reina was pleased that she found me, eliciting a mysterious giggle. Her mouth was smiling, but her eyes told me she was displeased by the fact that I had been hiding. Those eyes, they were just so empty. My legs began to quiver. Ugh, not good. In the pit of my stomach, some sort of viscous hot and cold substance began spreading around. If I allowed it, that substance would slip into my bloodstream and undoubtedly freeze all the organs in my body. Not good, not good. I'll be devoured by Reina at this rate. Strike back. Don't lose. I blustered, hiding behind my bravado. Now's not the time for that. You think you're gonna intimidate her? But Reina didn't flinch one bit.
ケイチ君と同じ。帰り道だよ。
じゃあそのナタは何だ。
じゃあケイチ君のそのバットは何なの？
俺は素振り。
じゃあレナは宝探しなの。
Reina gave a flippant explanation as to why she had such a fearsome weapon.
宝探し？
ダム現場の宝の山にね、また新しいかいいのを見つけたの。だからね、それを発掘するために必要なの。
信じるかよ、そんな。
信じないよね。
Reina's laugh was obviously very strange. I'd seen Reina's transformation many times before, but the one today was completely different. Like her mischievous tone and the shrewd glint in her eyes. It wasn't something that roundabout. I'm not sure what to say. It was just so obvious.
待ってよ、ケイチ君。
Reina didn't stop walking, even as she let out that eerie laugh. Whenever Reina got too close to me, I would scurry away and turn back towards her. This cycle repeated over and over. No matter how you looked at it, I was being chased by Reina and was trying to escape.
ついてくるなよ。それはできないぞ。レナのうちもこっちだもん。
When I met with Reina on this road yesterday, she cowered and trembled as she followed my commands. But today was different. Reina didn't show a hint of trepidation. Actually, Wasn't I the one who was cowering? If the way home for Reina and me was the same, that's fine. I'd just change my route. That'd work out, wouldn't it? Turned onto a side street I've never been down, knew little about. But Reina saw me do that and followed me while laughing. Why? Why? Aren't you going home? Then just go home down the street you normally do. Why would you follow me down this weird little side road? Those thoughts screamed in my head, eventually spilling out of my mouth.
どうしてついてくるんだよ
The tone of my voice was already tinged with terror.
ケイチ君とお話ししたいかケイチ君もレナとお話ししたいんじゃないかな
俺は何も話したいこと
嘘だよね。相談したいこときっとあるはずだよ。
ないレナと話すことなんか何もないよ
嘘だよね。
嘘じゃないよ
嘘だ
Reina's scream echoed, startling some nearby birds into flight. I cringed in fear. The only other thing I could do was increase my pace.
お話ししようよケイチ君。お話
Why was I running down this unfamiliar and deserted street? I don't know, bud. I don't fucking know.
ケイチ君には悩んでることがある。
ないよ何も悩んでない
嘘だ
Even though I was running, even though Reina was walking, why wasn't I getting any farther
わ
away?
かるよ。レナはわかるよ。怖いんだよねケイチ君。
怖くなんか何も怖いことなんか
嘘だ
My breathing grew heavy, and it felt like my legs were giving out from beneath me. Reina wasn't even breaking a
レ
sweat.
ナだけはそうだ。今度こそ乗ってあげられる。
I had no idea what she was talking about or what exactly she wanted to
今
do.
度こそ相談に乗ってサトシ君の時とは違うもの。
When she said Satoshi's name, I turned back for a moment. Even as I did that, Reina was still advancing. Couldn't afford to stop.
サトシ君も悩んでた。辛そうだった。でもレナはとても悲しかった。
Where did this street connect to? All these twists and turns, ups and downs. It's hard to believe that this was even remotely in the direction of my house. My sense of direction had long since gone out the
サ
window.
トシ君が転校しちゃった時ね、レナが相談に乗ってあげれば、サトシ君は転校せずに済んだかもしれないってすごく後悔した。
The road led me deeper into the forest. Jesus Christ. Wasn't I getting farther away from the village the more I ran? I lost more and more of my composure the more I thought about it. But despite this realization, my inner self was still disturbingly
だ
calm.
からね、もしもサトシ君みたいに苦しんでる人にもう一度会えたなら、レナが助けてあげようって。もう人が転校するところは見たくないな。
Damn it. What does transfer even mean? I won't let you transfer me. I won't end up the same as Satoshi.
さあケイチ君、レナに話して。レナはきっとケイチ君を理解してあげられるよ。レナだけはケイチ君の味方。
I started wheezing, out of breath. My lungs were so hot that they felt like they were going to explode. My heartbeat was beating as hard as it possibly could. I should have practiced running instead of my swing. Yep, cardio, bud. Couldn't even afford to scoff at that stupid thought.
悩みがなくなればきっとケイチ君も元通りみんなとも仲良しに戻れてまた楽しく部活ができるよ。今度は一緒に組んでみーちゃんをやっつけようね。
Yeah, how much fun would that be? Reina couldn't even imagine how much I had wished I could turn back the clock on these past few days.
レナともきっと仲良しに戻れるよ。また一緒に宝探しに行きたいね。今度はお弁当も作っていくよ。なんなら今から宝探しでもいいよ。行こうよ、一緒にダム現場。見つけたばかりのかわいいのケイチ君にも見せてあげるね。きっとケイチ君も気に入るよ。
My footsteps made pathetic flapping sounds as my legs wobbled and faltered. Hot on my heels, Reina's steps were sharply breaking twigs underfoot. I had to accept it. I was on the run, being chased by Reina. If she caught me, it was all over. I realized it instinctively. Couldn't even begin to think of what the end would entail. Just that if I was caught, it was all over. God damn. Man's put up this like strong bravado of like, yeah, if I have this bat around, I'll be able to like defend myself if anything happens. And then the moment something happens, he's like, I gotta run, I gotta run, I gotta run, I gotta run. Well, I mean, at this point, he's probably just too exhausted to even do anything with the bat. That's all I knew. Didn't matter how it was going to end. I wouldn't let it end. Not without knowing anything. Not yet. That momentary lapse was all it took. Of all the things that could have happened, my knees buckled underneath me and I crumbled towards the ground. Jesus Christ. Like, obviously, I can't imagine what's like being in that situation, being chased down by someone with a hatchet. Like, sure, yeah, that's terrifying, of course. Which is like, the whole reason you even started carrying this bat is in case you had to defend yourself. And then put in the position to where you would have to defend yourself, you just started running and running and running till you ran out of energy and couldn't use the fucking bat. It's just... out of your fight or flight instincts, you really have no fight instincts from what I can tell. Tried to stand frantically, urging my legs to respond. I used my bat as a makeshift cane to prop myself up, but Reina was already standing right in front of me. Compared to me, out of breath and utterly exhausted, Reina was so cool and composed that she could have froze the air around her. She wasn't breathing hard at all. Rather, I couldn't even sense if her heart was beating.
何が怖いのかな。怯えるなんてケイチ君らしくないよ。
Her expression looked almost affectionate. Those soulless eyes, that mask of affection. As she admonished me for trembling, Reina's hands deftly slipped over her head. The blur of arms as they moved made me feel as if I was staring at the godliness of the thousand-armed Buddha. Then as both of her hands met above her head, the hatchet that she held came into focus. I stared up at it in disbelief. It was all I could do.
教えてくれ、サトシはどうなったんだよ。
Reina stayed like that, with that hatchet raised above her head, and solemnly opened her mouth. It's as if she was expressing a farewell to a friend she was never to see again. That cruel scenario resided somewhere in her actions.
言ったよ。サトシ君は転校したの。
その転校っての、鬼隠しってこと。そうだろ。もう教えてくれた。サトシを消したのはレナかミオンか、それとも村の誰か答えろよ。
I became frantic the more I screamed, but Reina did nothing but maintain the smile frozen on her face.
ケイチ君が何を言ってるか。
じゃあ分かるように言ってやる。連続開始事件の犯人は誰だ。
ケイチ君は勘違いし。人間の犯人なんかいない。すべてはお社様が決めることだもの。
お社様のたたりなんて迷信。レナは信じてるってのか。
信じるとかお社様はいるの。
Reina's gaze grew even more gelid. The ferocity of her stare was so intense, not allowing me to question anything.
お社様なんて。
ケイチ君は信じないの？お社様。
信じられるはずないだろう。そんなのいるわけがない。
いるよ、お社様。ケイチ君だって身近に
そんなものか。
ケイチ君さ、誰かに謝られたことない？それもずっと。
All noise from the outside world disappeared. Only as Reina's voice resounded loudly and terribly.
それはね、許してもらえるまで学校へもお家へも枕元へも。
I could understand what Reina was
レ
saying.
ナのところへも来たんだよ、お社様。だからレナは転校してひなみ沢に帰ってきたの。
I don't understand. I don't understand. What does transfer even mean? What was Reina
ケ
saying?
イチ君のところにも。お社様、きっと相談に乗れるのは私だけ。ケイチ君を転校なんかさせないから。ね？
Reina's demented laughter clanged around inside my head. Was Reina saying Oyashiro-sama came to her as well? That's right. Last night I'd heard about that when I asked about Reina.
他言無用でまた内容には全てよろしいですね。
Oishi-san began speaking.
被害者も学校も告訴していないので、つまり警察が関与してないわけなんですよ。ですから詳細は関係者からの聞きと、つまり信憑性が高くない。
被害者って言いましたか？レナはガラスを割っただけじゃないんですか？
いえ、男子生徒が3人ほどリュウグウレナに殴られています。金属バットでです。2人はあざで済みましたが、1人は片目に後遺症を残すほどの大怪我をしたそうです。
それって傷害事件じゃないんですか？警察は逮捕とかしないんですか？
どういうわけか被害者が告発しないんですよ。警察に届け出がないので。
They were beaten with a bat and suffered significant injuries. Normally there would be a criminal investigation, but why didn't they press
被
charges?
害者の男子生徒3人にもそれぞれ話を聞こうとしましたが、こう言ってはなんですが、怯えてるんですよ。彼女が転校した今でも。
大石さん、話を最初から整理して話してくれませんか？
Rena hit people while she broke the windows? Or was it she started breaking the windows after she got bored of hitting people? They sounded similar, but the meanings were drastically different.
某月某日、リュウグウレナは親しい男子生徒3人と一緒にプール倉庫のあたりで話をしていました。
その3人って。
個人名は伏せますが、3人ともリュウグウレナととても親しい仲良しグループだったそうです。彼女はこう言ってんだったんですな。
So it wasn't that strange that the four of them were together.
それでどうなったんです？
理由はわかり、リュウグウレナはプール倉庫脇にあった野球部のバットを手に取り、
There were no witnesses. This was an account pieced together by the information given at the time of the incident. One day after school, Rena and 3 male students were at the pool storage shed talking together. They weren't seeking help, rather they were usually met up there. It appears it became a heated discussion. At that time, Rena underwent a change. The change was so abrupt that the 3 of them didn't comprehend what was happening. Then, taking the metal bat, she attacked her friends one after the other. Leaving her friends covered in blood with gashes on their heads, she made her way towards the school building. Then she broke the glass windows one after the other. A few minutes later, a teacher appeared on scene and subdued her.
レナに起こった。
3人の証言で一致するのは表変したという点です。
表変。
I also could recall Reina's transformation. I'd seen that change many times before. It was so different from the usual Reina that I couldn't help but believe it was someone else who looked like Reina.
その表変っていうのは。
いえ、そういうのは全くなかったそう。私も調べられる限り、彼女。
そのレナみたいに突然人が変わる現象って。
もちろんありますよ。精神的なものから性格的なものまでたくさんあります。
では、レナには潜在的に表変する要素があった。
断言はできません。ですが、リュウグウレナをよく知る友人たちからの証言では、とても彼女にそういう要素があるようには思えません。
Kind, caring, and adorable. Even before she transferred here, she was probably pretty popular in school like she was now. That girl transforming suddenly and assaulting them with a bat. Who could imagine such a thing? Nobody could have seen it coming. I myself sometimes believe that I was mistaken for thinking that was Reina, even now.
そしてどうなったんですか？
学校の正面が病院でしたので、3人はすぐに病院に担ぎ込まれ。
レナは、警察はどうして警察沙汰にならなかったんですか？
警察は呼ばれなければ関与はできませんからね。
一人は後遺症を残すくらい大怪我したんじゃないんですか？どうして訴えないんです？
私もそこは引っかかりました。何かの圧力、それとも訴えたくても訴えられない理由があったのか。
もちろん大石さんのことですから調べたんですよね。
ねえ、まあですが被害者たちの口がとにかく重いのです。触れたがらないというか、関わりたくないというか。
Reluctant to talk. Didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to be involved. It resembled the villagers here in Oyashiro-sama's curse.
学校の先生とかからは。
学校は聖域なんですよ。隠蔽体質とでも言いますか。
Yeah, that's true.
私も捜査令状を取ってませんから弱いんですよね。
じゃあ学校側は ノーコメント。
いえ、事件の存在自体を否定しました。ですが某日、間違いなく病院に3人の男子生徒が病院にその記録が残ってます。
被害者は語らず、学校は否定する。何もわからないじゃないですか。
ねえ、その事件があったという事実以上のことは何も。被害者たちもこの事件が公になることを望んでいませんので、私と前原さん、
For a brief
私た
period,
ち2人が忘れれば事件はそのまま闇に消えるでしょうな。
for a brief period, we sat in silence. At first glance, it looked like a simple assault case, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. The depths were obscured by rolling waves, sinking quietly into the void, as if it never existed to begin with.
その後、学校を謹慎で休学します。そしてその間、神経科医のカウンセリングを受けました。
その医者からは何か聞けたんですか？
これがまた職業倫理のしっかりした尊敬すべき方でしてね。口が硬いんですよ。もうとにかく。
警察手帳を見せてもダメなんですか？
書面で申請しろと言われました。手帳自体に法的拘束力は何もありませんからね。
じゃあ大石さんはどうやってレナがお社様のことを告白したことを知ったんですか？
一部を聞いてた看護師さんがいましてね。この方は手帳を見せただけで協力してくださいました。
それでなんと？
Turns out that the nurse hadn't heard everything. Apparently, all that she remembered was what she had overheard from inside the room.
看護師さんが言うには、その時のリュウグウレナはとても淡々としていて落ち着いていたそうです。
It was more like she was confessing her sins at church rather than a counseling session. She spoke with her mother there for some of it, but partway through, her mother was asked to leave, so it became a private counseling session between just the doctor and Reina for a while.
例のお社様の話はどこで出てきたんですか？
途中です。その名前を突然叫んだのです。だから看護師さんもびっくりして聞き耳を立てたのです。
お社様です。
Reina suddenly shouted that. I had no idea what was said before that, so I had no idea what the meaning behind it could have been. The doctor calmly and collectively asked Reina to have a seat.
そのお社様というのは何ですか？
Gently, ever so gently. A fundamental part of counseling is to be a good patient listener.
ひなみ沢を捨てた人は必ずお社様に追われるんです。そしてとうとう私のところにも来たんです。
竜宮さんが今のお家に引っ越される前に住んでい
私は引っ越したくなかったけど、お母さんとお父さんの都合で仕方なく引っ越しました。でもお社様は許してくれなかったんです。
Interesting. But Oyashiro-sama wouldn't allow it. Don't know what to make of that statement.
竜宮さんはきっとひなみ沢にもお友達がたくさんいたんでしょうね。今でも懐かしいんじゃないですか？
帰りたい。ひなみ沢に、帰りたいんじゃない。帰らなきゃいけない。本当はもっと早くに帰らなきゃいけなかった。でももうダメ。お社様が来てしまった。
お社様というのはそのひなみ沢の神様なんですね。
誰でも知ってるひなみ沢の守り神様なんです。それでひなみ沢を捨てて出て行こうとすると、
竜宮さんが引っ越しをされたのはもうずいぶん前ですよね。では今になってその神様がやってきた。
信じないでしょうけど、お社様はいるんです。
That nurse was then asked by another nurse to do something and left the room. That was all she remembered.
お社様がか。
確かにひなみ沢にはそういう迷信があります。里を捨てて出ていくとお社様の罰が当たるという。
Well, I think the specific wording that she uses is more important is abandon. I don't think they necessarily mean leaving the village, though that's definitely the way that Reina interpreted it. But I'm sure she was told that if you abandon the village, then bad things will happen. So she just interpreted that as leaving. But obviously, abandon can have a bit more interpretations in that. But also, I'm very curious to know, like, obviously we know Reina's got some mental issues. But all of a sudden, after being gone for years, we believe, that she starts seeing, Oyashiro-sama, but like, in what was the turning point? That's what I'm very curious to think. Or to find out, to think. What was the turning point? Because from the way she's talking, it leads us to believe that over these years, she's always suspected that there would be an issue with Oyashiro-sama, right? She always kind of thought there would be a problem, but it never like showed itself beyond that. But then all of a sudden there's this big incident, and Oyashiro-sama has finally found her, right? So maybe it has no actual connection to the village, if I had to guess. Like, the village wasn't involved in whatever caused her to snap, but whatever event took place with her and those classmates of hers caused her to snap, and she starts talking about Oyashiro and, the curse behind Oyashiro, and that's when the people from the village are like, they're worried about people looking more into it, actually investigating her claims and seeing what she's talking about. So they insist that she comes back to the village, right? Maybe they even put some pressure on her parents to be like, you bring her back here. We cannot have other people finding out about this. Potentially. Something like that. I knew very well that those scorned by the village incur. To hinder the dam construction project, they cursed the construction foreman to his death. In the following year, Satoko's parents, supporters, and leading advocates for the dam were cursed to their death. But this was the first time I've heard of the curse incurred by leaving the village.
初耳です。村の外敵がたたられるのはわかりますが、普通出ていくものはたたられないものじゃないんですか?
It was a bit strange to say it, but I could see as a rule that the people who came in are the ones who would be cursed. Far from Jupiter, far from his thunder. Curses weren't something to chase after people that leave, were they? Oishi-san pondered for a bit over on the other end of the receiver, then began speaking again.
ひなみ沢が大昔鬼ヶ淵と呼ばれていたという話はしましたよね。
I recalled hearing that. Long ago, Hinamizawa was feared and respected as the village of demons.
麓の村人たちは鬼たちを崇めていました。で、鬼ヶ淵は神聖な土地なので絶対に不可侵。むやみに立ち入るとお社様のたたりがあるとされてきたんです。
Those who set foot in Onikakushi, in other words Hinamizawa, would be cursed. I could understand that.
それはわかります。でも出ていくのまでダメってのは。
鬼たちもまたですね。属性に出ていかないようお社様に厳しく見張られていたんだとか。つまりお社様っていうのは属性と鬼ヶ淵の交流を禁じていたんでしょうな。
I see. Finally understood what sort of thing Oyashiro-sama was.
つまりお社様ってのは守り神ってよりも監視者なんですね。この地を外界から隔離しようとする。
そんな感じになるんでしょうな。すみません。私も詳しくないんです。この辺りはばあ様の受け売りでして。
I could understand it a bit better if it was like that. Those who came to Hinamizawa would be cursed, and those who tried to leave would also be cursed. So, because Reina originally lived in Hinamizawa and moved away, she fulfilled the requirements for being cursed.
つまりレナは望まない引っ越しをしたためお社様のたたりにあったと。
要約するとそういう意味なんでしょうな。実際この後しばらくしてhinamizawaに引っ越していますから。
Those who abandoned Hinamizawa and left were cursed. But then, why only Reina? Shouldn't Reina's parents also have been guilty of the same transgression by moving away and have been cursed? Also, in this day and age in Japan, shouldn't there be a lot of people coming and going? If every single one of them was cursed, then it'd be insane. But in reality, it wasn't that big of a deal at all. At most, there would be one person dying and one person disappearing on the day of the Watanagashi. I don't like saying at most, though.
まあとにかくわからないことだらけなんですよ。親代様のたたりがどうだったにせよ、クラスメートを金属バットで殴った理由にはなりませんし、被害者が訴えない理由にもなりません。
Yeah, I could see that. If, like, the Sonozakis with their, higher up influence, like, they, more than anyone, are trying to keep this incident under wraps, so no one fucking, puts their eyes on Hinamizawa. So therefore they also go to the families and be like, you cannot utter a fucking word of what happened.
まさか前原さんも恐ろしいたたりが起こって被害者たちが救い上がったなんてこと信じるわけないですよね。
Yeah, people who have no connection to Hinamizawa at all thinking that there was a curse. Yeah, no shot. Of course I didn't want to believe it. But more importantly, I had just realized something else. There was another bizarre connection that Reina made between Oyashiro-sama's curse and metal bats. Satoshi fell victim to Oyashiro-sama's curse and went missing. I had recently learned that Satoshi had also become infatuated with the metal bat right before he disappeared, just like me. Then Reina as well. She was affected by Oyashiro-sama's curse. She confessed that much to the doctor. And the weapon which she had used at the time of that horrendous act was, again, a metal bat. And finally, me. I'd encountered various things that were inexplicable, and now I was holding on to a metal bat. I was shocked when I learned that Satoshi did the same thing. It couldn't be. Had the same thing happened to Reina? But there was one critical difference between her and Satoshi's case. That being, Satoshi went missing after falling victim to the curse, but Reina was still here. Both of them had fallen victim to Yashiro-sama's curse, yet they were met with different endings. And finally, me. I couldn't call it a coincidence anymore. Reina, Satoshi, and finally, me. Could it be that I really was under Oyashiro-sama's curse right now? No. More importantly than that, what should I do now? Satoshi had been demoned away, vanishing without a trace. Reina was fine. Fine? Reina had undergone a change. I could only believe that there was something that wasn't Reina residing within her. And here, right now, it was standing before me.
レナ、教えてくれ。俺はどうなるんだよ。
Reina stood imposingly, not answering.
サトシは消えた。だけどレナは消えなかった。じゃあ俺は。
I'd never heard such an unpleasant laugh before. It had become akin to the sound of her breathing. It was no longer a voice or an expression of feeling.
大丈夫だよ。レナが助けてあげるから。
Reina took one step forward, still holding the hatchet high above her head.
さあ、
One step closer. Reina's face spread out to fill my vision.
話して。
One step closer. Reina's nose was close enough to touch mine, and was still pushing closer.
話したいことがあるんだよね。助けてあげるから話してね。話してね。
I slumped down, landing squarely on my butt. I thought you were already on the ground. Were you not already? Because your knees buckled and you fell. At what point did you stand back up? It wasn't for some pathetic reason. It was all I could do to get as far away from Reina. I had the gut feeling that I couldn't let her laughter end. Because when that laughing ended, the moment I picked up on that feeling, my body moved by instinct. Sprang to my feet so fast I couldn't even believe it, and pushed Reina away with both hands. Reina was as light as a feather. Thrown about by the unbalanced weight of the hatchet, she was sent backwards as if she'd been carried off by the wind. After confirming that out of the corner of my eye, I dashed off at full speed. I was the perfect picture of fleeing like a greased pig. Get away from Reina. Run away. Survive. Couldn't think of anything other than this. While I was running, I remembered I'd been holding on to a bat the entire time. Such a worthless weapon. Couldn't believe I'd forgot about this weapon at such an important time. I sped even farther down the winding path. Didn't even feel myself gasping for breath or my legs getting heavy. My body understood it as well. If I didn't run away from here, I wouldn't live. I could hear the laughter of that simulacrum of Reyna coming from behind me. It rang through the trees and in my head, and slowly chiseled away at my sanity. The grove of trees thinned out, my field of vision suddenly expanding. Or was this? For a moment, I was bewildered by the scenery I felt I knew, but couldn't quite remember. Quickly realized it was the dam site. The fact that I dashed madly and ended up in a place like this gave me a bad feeling, like I was following someone's scripted plot. I had a good view of my surroundings, but I didn't see a single soul here. This was a terrible spot for someone on the run, but there was no better place for an attacker. My heart was already on the verge of bursting. The muscles in my legs were screaming, but I didn't care. If I stopped here, then they might not even be able to scream for much longer. Even still, I glanced back looking for an excuse to rest. Reyna wasn't there. Instead, I saw two villagers walking around. I breathed a sigh of relief that it wasn't Reyna, but a third party. No. Except the voice inside me rang the alarm once again. Yeah. Oh, no, there is no safety. The only two people you could possibly feel safe around are your parents. Like, that's it. Otherwise, you see any other motherfucker show up, that's not a good sign. Villagers walking around were suspicious in and of themselves, but it bothered me. They both wore rough-looking clothes. Empty-handed, they definitely gave the impression that they were just out for a walk. But at this time of day, two adults wandering around without a purpose, it was enough to raise questions. More than anything else, those eyes. They weren't chit-chatting while walking. They were both silent, heading forward, looking in my direction. Was I at the end of my rope and had finally started imagining things? I should run away. That was probably the best choice. If they weren't involved, I'd lose them easily by running. If they were part of the group after me, then they would come running after me. Either way, unless I hurried up, Reyna would catch up with me. That's right. I was going to run. Deciding that, the moment I began to turn tail, both of them rushed towards me, as if they knew exactly what I was thinking. Somewhere inside of me, I had jumped to the conclusion that Reyna was the only thing I needed to be afraid of. I made the assumption that I didn't need to fear anything else. But right now, I realized just how blatantly wrong I was. Suddenly, the story Oishi-san told me about the demons all leaving the village to hunt prey floated through the back of my mind. I could tell they were both coming after me without even turning around because of their frenetic footsteps. It was frightening, being unable to shake Reyna off as she slowly closed in on me. But this didn't even compare. Being pursued with such violent ferocity, this straightforward horror was unparalleled. One of the pursuer's arms grazed my shoulder. That wasn't just their frenzied footsteps, but also the distinct sound of their breathing that I could hear. No, I could practically feel them breathing on me. They were already right behind me. Calm down, Keiichi, my bada. Still running at full tilt, I felt the surrounding area go still. No, it felt like time itself had stopped. I turned my head back slightly in that frozen world, realizing how close my pursuers had gotten to me. I couldn't win against the legs of an adult. In less than the time it would take to blink twice, when this frozen time began moving again, they'd be right on top of me. On top of me. And then... Don't think about that, Keiichi. First, realize that you won't be able to shake them off like this. If the fact you can't get away was a given, then you need to make a decision. Go with the right leg, or go with the left. You need to decide which one. Let's go with the left. The moment I decided that, the temporal singularity burst into pieces. Right. Left. I swung the bat in a wide arc with my right arm using that inertia. I stopped and suddenly spun.
No!
Two of them were clearly startled. Momentarily losing sight of me, both their outstretched arms, ready to grab me, instead grasped at empty space. The man on the right, I applaud him being able to figure it out, spun around to the spot I shouldn't have been and faced me in astonishment. But it was too late. I didn't even need to swing my bat. All I needed to do was extend my arms as I turned around. It was by no means a heavy blow, but seemed like it had enough power behind it to knock him off his feet. But just knocking him down was enough to scare him away. He got back up in no time. Both of them took a fighting stance and were ready to face me. This made me certain they weren't just two people out for a walk. They were clearly after me. It felt much easier than dealing with Reyna. Just by not recognizing their faces, by not knowing them, it made things easier. I smiled wryly on the inside.
俺に何か次は眉間にお見舞いするぞこの野郎
It's fine if it was just a bluff. By barking out at them, I was able to fire myself up. They didn't respond. They spread out to either side of me with unbelievably calm expressions on their faces. One of them would grab onto my bat, the other would hold me down. Was that their plan? Taking on both of them at once, would be impossible. Hot sweat poured from every pore in my body. I just have to settle it with the first move. I'd step in and strike the first one down. Narrowing my target down to the man on the right, who had already been knocked down before, I stepped in and swung with all my might. There was no way for an unarmed person to guard against it. It would cause immense damage. If they blocked with their arm, their bone would snap like a twig. If they turned their back to it, it was possible that the blow would travel all the way to their vital organs. Looked like he was aware of this. He pushed farther through the kill zone between us and delivered a fist right into my gut. Not good. With this distance, in this position, and this state, there was no way for me to dodge it. The world flipped upside down. I understood that I was being tossed around like a rag doll. I landed on the soft earth without a sound, feeling the grainy soil press against my face. It didn't hurt at all. But the moment I thought that, I suddenly felt pain coming from the abrasions on my skin, as well as the contents of my stomach being forced upwards, filling my mouth with a bitter sensation. I knew very well that I didn't have the time to relish this experience. I stood up as quickly as I could, but at that moment the other man was already barreling towards me. Being able to comprehend calmly that I simply couldn't dodge it made it all the more upsetting. After plowing into my stomach full force again, my assailant twisted around behind me and locked his thick arm around my neck. My throat felt like it was being crushed by his immense strength. Couldn't even contemplate that I was being strangled, or that I was about to go unconscious. My vision simply darkened, and a silent whining noise began playing deep inside my mind. I took everything I had to keep myself from blacking out. While this was happening, the other man was more than likely standing in front of me. I wasn't able to open my eyes, but I could feel that he was there. There was nothing I could do now. Unable to shake this arm off me, I couldn't run. I couldn't fight back. Dire straits. Couldn't even come up with the phrase that adequately described my situation. Oh. The familiar ceiling. The smell of the bed and pillows. I knew them well. Was this my room? Normally there wouldn't be anyone in my room besides me, but their presence made me spring wide awake. When I did that, pain shot through my entire body.
大丈夫かな？横になってた方がいいと思うよ。
I was Reina in my room. Blood began to surge through my muscles and my capillaries. But Reina's smile belonged to the Reina I knew well. I know I shouldn't let myself feel this way, but I relaxed thinking that this version of Reina was safe.
俺は
覚えてないの？
意識がなくなってからのことは全然。
My body had become more lethargic than I could have ever imagined. I guess that would be the expected outcome after exerting everything I had back there. I tried to at least clear my head, but I just couldn't shake the sluggish feeling out of my mind.
一応お医者さんにも電話したからもうすぐ来ると思うよ。それまで横になってた方がいいと思うな。
I wasn't injured seriously enough to merit calling a doctor, but knowing that someone impartial was coming was slightly reassuring. Someone impartial, buddy, they're a citizen of Hinamizawa, they're not going to be impartial.
俺確かダム現場で。
それはレナが聞きたいな。何があったのか。レナが行った時にはケイチ君倒れてて。
だから聞きたいの。変な二人組に襲われて。
As I talked about it, I finally remembered what happened right before I passed out. Recalling that memory and the terror that went along with it caused the fogginess around my head to clear right up. Let's forget about those two for now. I didn't expect Reina to be nursing me. I thought Reina was trying to kill me. She would have had the perfect chance while I was unconscious. Not only did she not kill me, she had nursed me back to health.
よく俺を引きずってここまで重かったろ。
Looking at Reina's delicate frame, it was hard to believe that she not only had gotten me back home, but even dragged me all the way up to the second floor. Did she have some help?
ケイチ君覚えてないの？
Reina appeared a bit surprised, but still kept her
レ
smile.
ナはケイチ君に肩を貸しただけだよ。大丈夫。自分で歩けるってケイチ君覚えてない？
I didn't remember. My memory was fuzzy after the point where I lost consciousness.
二人組はどうした？レナが来た時、俺と一緒に。
いなかったよ。
She said it bluntly. The way she stated it, it felt slightly unpleasant. I was just too timid at that time. Might have been able to force some answers out of Reina, but if I did that, then this kind Reina might transform into the scary Reina who I didn't know. Fearing that, I didn't press any further. Thinking about it, it was the obvious choice. If both of those men were there, I don't think Reina would even have stood a chance. That's what you think. If nothing else, I think like Reina shows up, hatchet in hand, giggling like a fucking psycho. Those motherfuckers book it the hell out of there. That or like the choice that seems very unlikely but also somewhat possible is like, yo, she definitely has some sort of feeling towards Keiichi regardless of whatever the circumstances are. And like, I don't know, I feel like she could have murked him. She could have done it. Like, that's kind of what I was half expecting that whole time while they were like, you know, while those people were ganging up on me, is like, I expected Reina to come out of nowhere and just like fucking swipe at one of them because like Keiichi is hers to deal with, right? So to let someone else fucking, you know, take what's hers, like she wouldn't fucking allow it. I totally expected her to just pop up and just at least take one of them out. I couldn't find a way to explain it unless I assumed she brought me here after those two were already gone. But that's the thing, like, if those two are part of the village, it makes no sense why they would just leave, right? They hit you with a gut punch, and they fucking, you know, choke you until you pass out, and then they just leave? Like, I don't know, bud. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. Reina was still smiling. Her eyes sparkled warmly. Yet, I felt like I was hallucinating when I saw something. Something akin to a shadow slowly creeping across her face. That small omen sent shivers down my spine. While Reina was still Reina, I needed to make contact. I needed to contact Oishi-san. Reina stopped me when I tried to get out of bed. She said it would aggravate my wound, so I should sleep.
トイレに行きたいんだけどな。
ごめん。
Reina couldn't say anything else. While Reina stayed in the room, I quickly went downstairs to get the phone receiver in the living room. When I approached the front door, the doorbell rang. Must have been the doctor Reina had called. Strange for a patient to welcome in the doctor who was making a house call. It would be incredibly reassuring to have him here for the considerable time it would take Oishi-san to get here. I'm starting to think that peephole on the door is something they added later that was not initially part of the actual setting of Keiichi's house, because motherfucker, use your goddamn peephole. I carelessly opened the door with that simple assumption and regretted it almost instantly. Mion? Yeah.
ミオン、
あれ元気そうだね。倒れてたって言うから様子見。
なんだよ。
レナが電話してきたから。他に理由が必要。
I understood why she would call a doctor, but why Mion too? Reina was descending the stairs behind me.
レナ、ケイちゃん大丈夫そうだよ。
Yeah, of course Reina's gonna come downstairs like, Keiichi, why aren't you in the bathroom?
たく、心配して損した。そうだね。レナも心配して損したかな。
They both began laughing. Appeared to be cheerful laughter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a darkness looming over them. Yeah, no shit.
何この下駄箱。どうしてたの？
The shoe rack that had smashed to pieces had been like that since yesterday.
その表紙に持ってたバットで叩いちゃったんだよ。
持ち慣れないもん振り回してるからこういうことになるんだよ。
I kept the fact that it was none of her business to myself.
でもこれじゃおばさまたちが帰ってきたらびっくりしちゃう。後でレナが片付けておくね。さあ、ほらケイちゃん、重病人なんだからちゃんと寝てないとダメ。さあさあ、お布団に戻った。
Both of them urged me up the stairs. I had no chance to call Oishi-san. Yeah, almost like that was planned or something. I was pushed into my bed. As it was the first time Mion had been in my room, she began searching around intently. Yeah, she's looking for the evidence, like, yeah, you can leave anything behind. She filled around my room and was scolded by Reina. You can imagine how it went. It was uncomfortable having my room poked around, but the conversation was so benign that it was heartwarming. During that innocent conversation, Mion said something as though it was perfectly ordinary.
レナ、監督には電話した？うん。みーちゃんに電話した後、すぐ来るって言ってたよ。
Director. That out-of-place word gave me a bad feeling. Reina called a doctor, then called Mion. And after that, she called a director? Who was this director? Since Reina and Mion's conversation was so peaceful, it only felt slightly odd.
二人とも監督ってなんだよ。
監督って言ったら監督だよ。
Thanks for clearing it up.
映画の監督とか工事現場の監督とか。
I dug through all my memories for a director who might have business with me. Only one thing came to mind. What Reina had just said. The construction site foreman. The very first victim of the first incident. The dismemberment at the damn construction site. The foreman? But that was strange. He was supposed to be dead. There was no way they could call him.
お前らが何の話をその監督が来るって言ったけど、うちに来るのか？
I asked one obvious question after another. But all the two of them did was smile coolly at each other. There was a huge difference between how the two of them appeared and how my suspicions were playing out. Slowly, I felt discomfort and panic welling up inside me. Couldn't understand what Reina and Mion were talking
ケ
about.
イちゃん、最近は野球監督。それ聞いたら喜ぶと思うな。
だから
監督は監督さんだよ。
だから
Reina and Mion looked at each other and laughed haughtily. That disturbing cackle unpleasantly resounded around me. That laugh, long enough to be unsettling, ended abruptly.
そうだ、監督が来る前に済ませとくかな。
What do you mean finish up?
ケイちゃん、覚えてるかい？
You know I don't. Her face was laughing, but Mion's eyes told me a different story.
覚えてるって。
ケイチくん忘れちゃったのかな。罰ゲームなんだよ。
I knew that would fucking come back to bite him in the ass.
罰ゲームなんだよ。忘れちゃったの。おはぎの宿題。どれがレナの作ったおはぎかを当て。あれ、確か宿題忘れだったよね。
I certainly did have that homework, but I'd thrown away the rest of the mochi after I'd found that sewing needle, so I wasn't able to answer which one Reina made. What do you mean you were able to answer which one Reina made? You figured out which one was hers by fucking biting into the one that you thought was hers, and that's where the needle was. The penalty for that? Why now? Why now? Because they're not gonna have another chance. Because whoever the fuck the director is gonna come in and fucking take you away. No doubt my question was written all over my face. Their answer to my question was that dry laughter. I could no longer make heads or tails of anything. I began to think that this entire day was somehow insane. Strange. Incomprehensible. Being chased by Reina, attacked by strange men, the penalty Mion and Reina were talking about. What were these two laughing at? It didn't take that long for me to realize I had been dragged into an abnormal situation. Oh, you just now realize that? Who were these two? Who were these people? Who were these doppelgangers of Reina and Mion? Reina had gotten behind me at some point. Why was she pinning my arms behind my back?
何の真似だよ。
動かないでね。罰ゲームだから。
My body was already very sluggish, and Reina pinning my arms made it that much harder to move. I seriously tried to struggle, but she wouldn't even budge. My panic began to well up, and I realized this was well beyond the realm of jokes and pleasantries. No shit! This freakishly monstrous strength would have been impossible for the Reina that I knew. Then, these thin, frail arms grasped me firmly. Whose arms were they?
ケイちゃん、抵抗しちゃダメだよ。快速台。何錠でもいいや。罰ゲームに抵抗しちゃダメなんだからさ。
Mion. No, that thing that looked like Mion spoke to me like how Mion would speak to me. But I was certain that this was not Mion. Someone who wasn't Mion. Someone who was just pretending to be Mion.
監督が来る前に済まさないとね。
Mion fished into her pockets and pulled out something bizarre. I could tell what it was just by looking, but for such a thing to be in her pocket, my mind wouldn't accept it.
なんだよ。それ。
It was a small syringe. It was a small, clear syringe, the kind a doctor might use if you went to them with a high fever. Reina held me even tighter, and I could hear that clattering laughter no matter how that no longer sounded like laughter blaring into my ear. That eerie laughter. It wasn't something that the Reina I knew could ever produce from her own throat. This thing that was pretending to be Reina, was this their real laugh? Unable to defend myself, the syringe Mion was holding drew closer, and that needle tip was waved in front of my face countless times.
大丈夫大丈夫、痛くないから痛くないから。
何をする気だよ。これは一体。
ケイちゃん、分かってんでしょ。
何が。俺には何が何やらさっぱりわからねえよ。
知ってるくせに今さらかまととぶられてもな。
わけのわからないことを言って俺を煙に巻くのはやめろ。
富武さんと同じ目に遭ってもらう。
The same as Tomitake-san? I didn't really understand what she meant. What did that have to do with this syringe? Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Keiichi, come on.
ケイチ君、うすうすは気づいてたくせに。
Reina whispered into my ear, laughing as if to admonish me. But even the way she spoke was repulsive beyond compare. Playing dumb? Me? About what? Oh my god. Playing dumb? Me? No, I'm not playing. I'm just dumb. What do you mean? The same as Tomitake-san. Fuck, dude, I don't know. What could they possibly mean by that?
みんな初めはひき逃げされたものだと思っています。ですが、意識を確かめるために近づいた警官はすぐに異常に気づきました。喉がね。
ナイフとか？
爪でした。
Nails. Mm-hmm. That's right. Tomitake-san had clawed out his own throat with his own nails and died. There's no way someone could die like that. So then for that to
薬
happen...
物を疑いましたが、そういう類のものは検出できませんでした。
That's right. The police didn't find any drugs in Tomitake-san's system.
警察は富武さんの遺体から薬物は検出できなかったって言ったぞ。
What kind of fucking laugh sound is gwe gwe gwe? The two of them laughed together with that sickening laughter. Of course they'd laugh. To assume that such a medicine didn't exist just because the police didn't know about it was completely foolish. Yup. Meaning the drug that caused Tomitake-san to die in such a bizarre manner did exist. If Mion injected this into me, then that would probably be all the proof I needed. Except you wouldn't survive long enough for it to be proved. That basically mean I'd end up the same as Tomitake-san. Become hysterical, scratching out my throat in my last moments, then die. For such an outrageous drug to exist, for Mion to be holding it, and that I was about to be injected with it. At that moment, I did not feel there was any need whatsoever to question it. What kind of idiot, when he's trying to dodge a ball flying straight for his face, has time to think of a reason as to why it's flying at him?
観念しなって。んじゃ。
Mion's actions lacked any gravitas, and that made it even more terrifying. There was none of the ceremony like when someone is sentenced to death. There was no hesitation at all, as if she were brushing her teeth. Mion reached out with one hand and grabbed onto my chest. It felt like electricity had run through the back of my head and the entire world had gone dark. Did I stand up too fast? Or did someone hit me really hard in the back of the head? Having lost my sense of balance, I was assaulted by a wave of dizziness. Okay. I squatted down for a bit. When I came back to my senses, my entire room had changed drastically. The numbness in my head was gone, and slowly, I could tell blood was flowing to my extremities again. How long had I been squatting here? How many minutes? Or has it been hours? It was almost as if the hands on the clock had stopped moving the entire time my eyes were closed. That's how little time passed. Really? The air in the room wasn't filled with that madness from before, only a dull silence. Reina wasn't there pinning my arms, and Mion wasn't there about to inject me with a needle. No way. Could it be? All of it was a hallucination? No. There was no other presence in the room besides my own. It was the weirdest experience I'd ever had. I was certainly with Reina and Mion. I doubted my sanity for a moment, but I was also seized with some sort of comfort. I guess that terrible ordeal was a hallucination. Neither Reina nor Mion, they would never do something so terrible. My head grew hot. I could tell my emotions were welling up. Why? There was no reason to cry. Why? It was sorrow. Why was I sad? I don't understand. I don't understand. Kind to everyone, not discriminating against age or gender. Mion. That Mion was sprawled by the window in an unnatural pose. Oh, fucking what? So what? They injected him with the drug thinking he'd claw at himself and instead he fucking attacked them? Is that what fucking happened? Blood stained her a deep red from head down to her chest. The bright crimson smear on the walls. The splatter had undoubtedly come from Mion. She always had that bright smile and was kind to me from the day I transferred. Reina. That same Reina was slumped at my feet. It was making the same pool of blood as Mion. I couldn't comprehend what had happened. Did someone come to save me? Then they beat these two down? With this metal bat? Yeah, bud. Yeah, bud. Someone came in and swooped in and saved you. You definitely didn't take to the drug a lot differently than Well, no, that's the thing. Because Tomitake, like, grabbed, like, a chunk of wood, right? And was, like, swinging at his attackers. But I guess I'm guessing they thought with how exhausted Keiichi was, right? After being chased and fucking beaten and strangled, like, that he wouldn't have the energy to fight back, maybe? I finally noticed the weight in my right hand. How long had it been there? It was Satoshi's metal bat. It was covered in a deep red. There was no doubt that this was the weapon used to mutilate both of them. And I was holding that weapon. I was the only person in the house. Looking at this objectively, I couldn't think of anyone other than myself who could have done it. That's right. Keiichi Maibara. Of course I did it. I told myself gently, as if coaxing myself. Hey, me. There's no reason for you to remember it, nor is there a need to regret it. Eat or be eaten. You get that, don't you? Well, yes. There's going to be a lot of blood when you beat someone to death with a metal bat. That's just unavoidable. Neither Reina nor Mion moved an inch, because they were dead. It wasn't just a split forehead and a trickle of blood, nothing that simple. The entire room was splattered with red that told me it didn't end with just 2 or 3 strikes. Oh fuck, dude, I wonder. You're looking at all this blood, like there's so much blood you feel the need to comment on it and be like, oh my god, there's so much blood. Are they dead? The depths of my mind were calm, but on the surface I was panicking and agitated. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. What happened to your usual calm self? Come on now. Do like you always do. Throw your head back and take a deep breath. Come on. Once. Twice. Breathe deeply. Calm down. Calm down. I chanted that over and over in my head and relaxed. Call Oishi. Color came back to my vision and smells reinfused the air. At the same time, I remembered what happened when I blacked out. Reina and Mion had attacked me. They were about to inject me with whatever caused the same symptoms as Tomitake-san. Right before that happened, I fought back. I twisted my whole body and threw Reina as she was pinning my arms. Then I followed through with my spin and ran my foot as hard as I could into Mion's torso. It was soft. Reina tried jumping onto me, so I tackled her as hard as I could and slammed her against the wall. I didn't let that brief moment of having them off balance slip by. Satoshi's bat was left carelessly by the side of my desk. At that moment, everything went pitch black. There was nothing recorded past this point in the videotape of my mind. No, that wasn't right. It wasn't that there was nothing recorded. It was recorded just fine. Just the other me inside myself had told me not to look and had turned off the TV. Just because the screen had gone black and I couldn't see it, didn't mean that the videotape within me hadn't recorded it. Okay, so if you fought back before they injected you with the drug, then the syringe should still be there. So you need to call Oishi and be like, I have the drug they used. I fought back against them. Help. The TV was just off. The video was still playing. The tape within me, creaking along, still playing. On the other end of that pitch black screen, that horrifying video was still playing on. All compared to this, though, the scene right before my eyes, was still so difficult to take in. And I get that. I get why you're not acting right away. I'm not trying to fucking say that's the bad thing. Like, obviously, this is something traumatic. You gotta be like, really come to terms with what happened. But also, find that fucking syringe and call Oishi. There was blood splattered everywhere on the walls, the two of them in these unnatural poses. Not a sign of movement from them. Couldn't even tell if they were breathing. No matter what the circumstances were, my friends, these girls, I had attacked them. I may have even killed them. But if I hadn't done this, I would have been the one done for. Balancing that out on an imaginary scale, felt odd that I'd even feel bad about it. Even if it was a bit excessive, this was justifiable self-defense. Proof was all here. The two of them collapsed here in Mion's syringe. Mion's syringe filled with some unknown drug that would certainly solve the mystery surrounding the incident with Tomitake-san. Which is why you need to take that syringe. If anything, hide it somewhere. Hide it, you call Oishi, and you be like, hey, I have the drug. I don't know if I'm going to make it until you get here, but I'm going to hide it in this spot. Come and get it. And from that fact that both of these two were involved, they'd be able to pick out the criminals one after the other. As long as you call Oishi. If you're expecting the people in Hinamizawa to come to your rescue, you're out of your fucking mind. You need to step out of it and go get the phone. Still, I might be suspected for this. But that was just fine. Anyway, now this should be a police affair. So call them. Because if you're expecting the people of Hinamizawa to go call the police, that's not going to happen. Call them. This wouldn't fade into the darkness like Reina's past incidents. It will if you don't call them. As long as the police were involved, that should bring this to a close. So call them. They'll probably revisit their investigation on the chain of incidents if you call them. Oishi-san would definitely get to the bottom of it. If you call him, meaning my wish of not wanting to die, wanting to know the truth, that would be fulfilled in its most basic form. If you call the fucking police. If you're thinking you're just going to sit here and things are just going to happen for you, God damn it. Quit monologuing and do something. It was all a matter of time now. No, it's a matter of fucking moving your ass and picking up the phone. The Dr. Reina call should be getting here soon. And you think he's going to call the fucking police? Is that what you think is gonna fucking happen? He's gonna see the syringe and fucking destroy the evidence. Hide the syringe, call Oishi, tell him where you hid it. Maybe even give him a brief rundown on what happened. And then, hide the syringe and then hide yourself. Keiichi, I'll confess everything to it. No! God fucking damn it, Keiichi! You stupid fuck! I'll confess everything to the doctor. You know, the doctor in Hinamizawa, who's clearly connected to Hinamizawa. He's gonna see the daughter of this influential family dead. He's gonna see the Reina, who most people probably know has some hand in the fucking Watanagashi murders, fucking dead. He's gonna see me with the metal bat and go, we gotta take care of this kid. He's gonna see the syringe and be like, oh, they tried to hit him with the drug. I'm gonna destroy the syringe so that if the cops do get called in here, they're not gonna have any evidence. Because for some reason, you think a fucking citizen of Hinamizawa is gonna save you. God damn it, Keiichi. I need to contact Oishi. Yes! Finally! Finally! Dear fucking God! At that moment, I remembered. Besides the doctor, a director had been called. It was easy to imagine they were someone deeply involved with the incidents, judging from Reina and Mion's conversation. The ache in my chest, caused by the gruesome deed I'd done, dissipated rapidly. It was not over yet. No shit! Go get the phone now! This place was no longer safe. Stay calm, Keiichi Maibara. It's not over yet. I need to live long enough to tell the police of this incident. At that moment, I felt like I heard someone's voice from outside. Since people were speaking, it must mean there was more than one person. I moved the curtain ever so slightly and peered outside. It was a bizarre sight. About 4 or 5 grown men were all gathered at the gate. They very much resembled the 2 men who assaulted me at the dam site today. Those 2 might even be among them. There was one person there wearing a white coat, but he didn't look like a doctor at all. My gut told me he was in disguise, only posing as a doctor. That guy would probably ring the bell and get me to open the front door. Pretend to be a doctor to get me to open the door, and then the rest of them would all rush in at once. At that moment, I saw the car parked behind the men. My heart nearly skipped a beat. The white van. No mistaking it. That van, the one that had tried to run me down. The man in the white coat entered the gate and headed towards the front door. The rest of the men hid in the bushes and watched him. Probably couldn't pretend that I wasn't home. Undoubtedly, they'd just break the window and enter. Need to get out of here somehow. Then use a public phone to contact Oishi-san. Take the syringe. Take the fucking syringe, dude. You need to take the fucking syringe. See, Oishi kept being let down that there wasn't evidence, right? Like, oh, they tried to feed me this sewing needle and tried to, attempt to harm me that way. Do you have the sewing needle? I don't have the sewing needle. And then there was another instance. Do you have proof that happened? No, I don't have proof that happened. He's like, well, it's unfortunate. Like, now you have evidence. You have something that can actually help your fucking case here, dude. If you do manage to get out of your house and get to a public phone, you need to have the fucking syringe with you and be like, I have the proof they were going to use this. They said it was the same thing they used on Tomitake-san. You need that syringe. I know you're very focused, or at the very least you need to hide it somewhere in your room. At the very least, like, maybe not take it with you in case you get jumped, right? But like, at the very least, hide it somewhere so that if you can escape, you get to a public phone, you can tell Oishi where it is. Then meet up somewhere. First of all, I needed a weapon, then shoes. Before all that, there's one thing I had to do. I had no intention of dying. I'd live and reveal the truth about this nonsensical curse of a Yashiro-sama. What would happen from here on, regardless of how determined I was, may bring about my demise. And that was why. There's one more important. Ugh, Jesus. There was one thing more important than getting out of here right now. Yes? Please tell me you have a brain. I need to get that clock out quickly and take down the note hidden behind it. Damn it. The tape was sticking to it fast. It'd be fine if it was torn a little. I opened up the slightly torn note and began writing another passage with a ballpoint pen. I wasn't able to inform Oishi-san. The only thing I could rely on was this note. Never thought this piece of torn college-ruled notebook paper could be this reliable before. I had no time. I'd only write what I knew right now. Need to leave some sort of information that would lead them to uncover the truth. Yes. You leave a note that tells them where the syringe is, you hide the syringe, and then you can be about your way. Rayon and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. This was an undeniable fact. I still didn't want to believe it, but it was a fact. Anyway, I'd leave all the information that would help lead them to finding the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. There's everything I was able to see from the window. There may be more. Also, there's that unidentified person known as the director. To begin with, the term director didn't even mesh with Hinamizawa at all. If they were going to include the directors from the past instance, then the only one is the construction foreman, the victim from the first murder. The very first victim in the chain of incidents. Killed in a lynching, his body divided into 6 pieces. His right arm was never discovered. The police should have confirmed that death, but Reina and Mion did both call him director. They said director. They wouldn't use that term to refer to someone who was dead. The police would never even conceive that someone who was deceased could be involved. Could that be some sort of oversight? I didn't know. But even if I didn't know, it could be a big hint for Oishi-san. That's right. They needed to start fresh from the first incident. It wasn't just a simple dismemberment, but the start of the string of mysterious deaths that would follow. So then, there must be something hidden there. That's great, and I'm happy to theorize about that once we're, out of the immediate, danger. Brother, there is evidence. There is evidence in your fucking room that you cannot leave. Massive fucking evidence that would help insanely in their fucking case, dude. Please reinvestigate the victim from the dismemberment incident. He's alive. His death should have been established after an autopsy. Logically, you would think as much. But was that really the case? Could it have been some sort of ploy that they were able to deceive the police with? Maybe. Is now the time for theories? I don't think so. I shouldn't jump to conclusions, but he may still be alive. I had no time to ponder that right now. Oh yeah, something even more important I needed to write. Tometaki-san's death was from an unknown drug. That's right, that drug. It was an irreplaceable piece of evidence, thank God. Now what are you going to do about that, Keiichi? Don't just say it was a piece of evidence, do something. No doubt, just by having this, everything would be uncovered, yes? I couldn't just leave that vital clue lying on the floor, thank Christ. Oh, you had me so stressed out this entire time, boy. Oh my God, thank fuck he connected the dots. Oh, you had me so stressed. Like, is this kid really just be like, I'm gonna write down my theories, slip my paper under the clock, and get out of here? Oh, fuck. I'm not gonna lie, I was legit like on edge. I'm like gripping the fucking armrests of my chair, just like, please, for the love of God, Keiichi, think about the goddamn syringe. Oh, fuck. Oh. This syringe is proof. Writing that down, I stuck the syringe onto the back of the clock with plenty of tape, so it absolutely would not slip out and fall to the floor. Firmly. Firmly. There we go. There we go. That's all we needed. That's all I needed. Alright? That's all I needed. Now that that is established, fucking do what you want, big dog. Do what you want. Get the fuck out of here. The bell rang. They were here. Couldn't write anymore. But even still, there's one less thing I had to write. I have no idea why it has become like this. This may be the closest thing to the truth out of everything I wrote in this note. If you are reading this, then I am probably already dead. Though you may or may not find my body. I was going to write out everything that could happen, either dying from the curse or being demoned away. You who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. With this, my last will and testament was complete. I wasn't certain that I was going to die, but it was my final plea, just in case. I folded the note, stuck it onto the back of the clock, and returned the clock back to its usual spot. I couldn't help but pray. Oishi-san, if something happens to me, I'll leave the rest up to you. After that, I gazed down silently at Reina and Mion. This was probably the last time we'd ever see each other. They ain't seen shit, bro. They dead. Reina, Mion.
俺みんなのこと本当に友達だと思ってたんだぜ。
But why did it end up like this? Never had any fun in my previous school. I only worried about standardized test scores. If the school I had hoped to get into was where I really wanted to go or a safety net, that was all I talked about. It was a dull life. People I called friends were also my rivals in studying, in competitions, in personal records, and standardized test scores. Everyone here taught me how unhealthy that lifestyle was. This month was really fun. Making a fuss over lunch, making a fuss over the club, making a fuss over a festival. Something hot began dripping from my face. Yeah, you know what? totally fine to cry, but honestly, even if you don't escape the house, if you sit here crying over their bodies, the people burst in, fucking take you away, whatever. You know what? You got the stuff in the clock. However this ends, you did what needed to be done. You want to cry over your friends? That's totally understandable, bud. Uncontrollable tears. You should have no obligation to shed tears for them. But they wouldn't stop. Even if they were after my life. Even if they were trying to kill me. Everything that happened this month. I wouldn't forget it. Or could it be those happy days were all a facade as well? See, I don't believe that. I genuinely don't. Like I said, I think Mion's tears seem genuine when we confronted her on it. I think she genuinely didn't want this to be your fate. I think she wanted you to integrate into the village and become a part of everything. You know, and just be like one of everyone else. You know, that there would never be any issues. You could just be another friend they had along for the ride. That's why she was genuinely so tore up about it. I believe the same of Reina as well. I believe Reina didn't want it to come to this. I believe Reina genuinely felt something for you. I do believe all those things were genuine. Satoko and Rika, like, they obviously weren't near as close with Keiichi, so I can't really gauge, you know, their intentions too much, or how much involvement they had in anything. But those two, the ones that you're crying over right now, from what I can tell, I don't think that was a facade. Was it all a trap? Meticulously orchestrated up until today, to ensnare me? Could have been that I just arbitrarily assumed that they were my friends. That couldn't have been the case. Both Reina and Mion, they really were my friends. Those happy days, there was nothing fake or unclear about them. Someone probably forced them to kill me. I don't know about force, but definitely, like, manipulated them into doing so. That's definitely the case with Reina. Reina was definitely manipulated into doing so. Mion, like, probably more so forced. Or more so, like, obliged into doing it. Right? She felt it was her obligation to do it. Or their minds were taken over, possessed by the supernatural entity known as the Yashiro-sama. Don't talk like that. Shut up. Regardless, both Reina and Mion, they were the best friends ever. And when they were when they were coming after me, it wasn't of their own volition. But they weren't the kind of people to sell off their friends, no matter what means were employed to force them. Jesus Christ. And there was no way such a thing as being possessed by Oyashiro-sama could happen in reality. Then, did the real Reina and Mion come after me? What was I thinking? What a silly dumb idea. Having beaten down both Reina and Mion, I was still debating if they were the real ones or fakes. There was no real or fake. Only the reality that was before me. Reina and Mion were sprawled out at my feet. That was the only truth. I was only trying to twist the facts to my benefit that I had beaten my friends to death. No matter how I spun it, it wouldn't change reality. Reina and Mion were both dead. Felt like there was a crack in the dam of strange emotions I was holding back. Felt like my calm state, which was nothing more than a bluff, had receded. And in that opening, insanity was leaking out. I killed them. Reina and Mion. I killed them. The doorbell rang again. The unrelenting echo pulled me back into a state of composure once again. I didn't have a moment to spare. Quickly, I needed to get away. I didn't want to die. I would uncover everything after that. The identity of whoever or whatever had pushed me this far. Even if I had to drink mud and eat grass, I would survive. I would survive. I would definitely survive. I killed Reina for that very reason. I also killed Mion. I went that far just to keep living. So I can't die. For my sake and for the sake of the late Reina and Mion, I have to survive. I ran towards the door and grabbed my shoes. The doorbell rang again as if to urge me on. Behind the single solitary door, they were there. Keeping quiet, I head towards the kitchen. Head towards the back door. Before opening the back door, I put my ear to it and checked for people outside. No one? After I put on my shoes, I opened the door slowly as not make a sound. Piercing voice echoed out. That voice stabbed through me, setting my hair on end. I had to run. Get out of here, Keiichi. One after the other, I felt stuff like rationale and intelligence, those things you use when you have time to spare, spill out of me. I didn't feel any pain from the branches scratching my arms and forehead. My autonomously pulsing heart also felt neither fatigue nor pain. My entire being just wished to live. There was nothing else it desired. It probably had no complaints whatsoever, so of course I wouldn't feel fatigue. I just ran. Just recklessly, rushing in the direction I was already heading. Even if nobody was chasing after me, I'd still be running like this. There wasn't a thought in my mind about where I was headed. Turning around, I felt a presence right next to me. That presence was without a doubt chasing me like my shadow. If I took even one misstep, I would be devoured. That's what I thought. So I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. I ran. At full speed. That was the chirping of the Higurashi telling me it was evening. Trying to tell me something, and then I finally heard it. The wailing cry of the victims who didn't make it. Would I be joining them? Only the Higurashi knew. They knew everything. They definitely knew. So, I ran, towards where I could hear more of the Higurashi's chirps. But the farther I ran, the farther away their chirping became. I'm gonna get near them. Why are you all running away? Was it my fault? Was I the one to blame? Then I'll apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I felt that only the Higurashi knew. Interesting. Okay. The smoking room was filled with a cloud of cigarette smoke. The expensive smoke filter gave off some crackling electric noise, but it didn't seem like it was doing anything at all. Why do smokers have to be shoved so far down this corridor where the sun didn't even reach? I recalled hearing that the tax revenue from tobacco was about 1/10 of the municipality's revenue. We were the most heavily taxed members of this municipality, so I really wish they'd show us a little more respect.
どうしてこれがウーマン切りなんすか？
Y'all playing mahjong?
街が狭くなっちゃうっすよ。
One of the younger detectives was having a staring contest with the mahjong magazine called Next Turn.
ウーマン切ってもテンパイ崩れませんから、配定にかけるなら両面で受けた方がチャンスあるんじゃないですか？
クマちゃん、川を見てください。ウーマンは全員切ってますから安牌なんですよ。終盤で K 点に走った誰かがダマで待ってたら嫌でしょ。
The kid let out another groan, put out a cigarette, then took out another one.
納得いかないっすね。わざわざ自分で当たり牌減らすなんて。
Okay, you gotta pay attention to what they're saying. They're saying, this isn't just some throwaway conversation, is it? Why would you reduce your own options?
ちなみに配定で当たり牌出しても論しちゃダメですよ。
え、どうしてですか？
Just then I heard a voice coming from down the hall.
おいさん、いますか？一般の方から凱旋です。
ありゃ、こりゃどうも。それじゃ、ちょいと失礼。
So saying I can't really understand the analogy too well if there is one there, because I fucking don't understand mahjong very well at all. It's why it was probably one of my least favorite parts of playing through the Yakuza series. Anytime there was a mahjong, a sub story connected to winning a mahjong game, I'd always have to find like the cheat item to get through it. So he's like, why would you get rid of this tile? Shouldn't you keep it with you? Because it gives you... So why would you get rid of something? Shouldn't you keep this thing with you so you have more options later on? But he's saying if you have that tile, you won't actually win. If you have this thing, you won't actually win. Interesting.
どうしてロンしちゃダメなんすか？ああ、待ってくださいよ、大石さん。
God damn it. I have business to attend to. What do you care about mahjong at a time like this? Man sitting in the seat Oishi-san was heading towards waved at their telephone receiver.
凱旋です。講習から。
ああ、どうもすいません。お待たせしました。もしもし。
大石さんですか？もしもし。
前原さんじゃありません。どうもどうも。こんにちは。
From the tone of Maibara-kun's voice, I already knew he was in a predicament. This is the first time Maibara-kun had phoned me. He was calling from a
落
payphone.
ち着いてください。何がありました？
His voice was erratic over the line. He'd completely lost his sense of composure. Checking that nobody else could hear, I prompted him in a hushed tone.
何があったんです？落ち着いて前原さん。今そこに近場の警官、私もすぐそっちに行きますよ。
多分無理です。
His voice was quivering and hoarse. He wasn't surrounded by people, even as he was making this call, was he?
前原さんは今公衆電話からどこの公衆電話ですか？
There were no other sounds beside Maibara-kun's voice. Had to be a phone booth. Scratched out a note and thrust at my colleague sitting across from me. Hinamizawa, phone booth. He understood quickly and hastily started on the internal lines.
落ち着いて今どういう状況なんです？
It was best practice to avoid flustering someone panicking, but this was an urgent case. Maibara-kun didn't just get in trouble, get away, and then call me. He was in the midst of something dangerous right now. But yelling at Maibara-kun right now would just needlessly cause him to be even more frantic. Maibara-kun wasn't just calling to seek help. He was trying to tell us something more than that. Whatever that was, if I didn't get it from this call, I was certain there would never be another chance. My colleague pushed a note in front of me. There's only one booth in Hinamizawa. Patrol car is on the way. 5 minutes.
かかりすぎです。警らには何人乗ってます？
2人です。
Not enough. If it was as I imagined, there were likely quite a few people surrounding my Maibara-kun. 5 minutes was too long.
南沢の駐在さんには電話しました。
定時巡回の時間です。家人は留守で連絡不能。
そう。熊ちゃん、車を回してください。
了解っす。
もしもし、大石さん。
もしもし、大丈夫。ちゃんと聞こえてますよ。
There was something wrong with my Maibara-kun. It wasn't a normal coughing sound. Vomiting? Or was it blood? Had he already been attacked? Was he injured?
前原さん、今2、3分で到着しますからな。もしもし、聞こえてますか？前原さん。
I could hear on the other end of the line that he was having a coughing fit. The worst possible situation popped into my
前
head.
原さん、犯人は誰です？何人なんです？
俺も最初は人間が犯人なんだと思いました。
I couldn't tell if that was a cough or vomiting.
大丈夫ですか？前原さん。
犯人は人間なんだってついさっきだけどやっぱり
It was an intense bout of coughing and vomiting.
やっぱり今
前原さん、
なんかさっきからずーっとつけてくるんですよ。走っても走っても影みたいにピッだけど少し俺の背中に
前原さん、そいつは今ひょっとして
後ろにすぐ
お願いです。怖いのはですが、あなたの後ろに
振り向けるわ。振り向いたら
怖いのはわかりでも教えて、ちょっと振り返るだけでいいんです。前原さんの後ろに
Right
誰
after,
がいるんです？
right after I said that, I could hear him vomiting intensely. What followed was a nightmarish sound.
前原さん、 あんたまさか喉を引っかいてたりはしないでしょうね。
There was no answer, but I could hear something, like scratching. So they did get him. So maybe Mion did inject him. Because all we know is that Keiichi did tape the syringe behind the clock, but we don't know that he actually checked to see if the syringe was empty or not. He was just like, oh, here's the syringe. It's possible he did get injected, because we do know that when Tomitake was injected, he started swinging wildly, right? He grabbed a piece of lumber and was just fucking swinging wildly at his attackers. But at the time, his attackers knew well enough to, like, I'm guessing they, like, snuck something into Tomitake, right? Whereas with Keiichi, they just outright did it right in front of him. They told him what was going to happen, and they just did it. There was a bang, as if something was being hit. My Bada-kun had probably dropped the receiver. I could hear groaning and vomiting over on the other end, and a repeating abnormal noise.
もしもしもしもし前原さんもしもーし
I knew how far away my voice would sound on the other end, but I couldn't help but shout. That moment, I heard whispering coming from the other end. Couldn't tell what he was saying. The way he was saying it, was he talking to himself? Or was he talking to someone there?
もしもし前原
Rather than whispering, it was some kind of mantra he was chanting over and over. Focused my senses, trying to pick up what he was saying. What was he repeating? What exactly? The clock. Something about the clock. Beep. Suddenly the line went dead. Did he use up his time? It was because it was a payphone. It was because it cut out so abruptly. Last thing he said came out so clearly in my mind.
おいさん車をおいさん
ごめんなさい
Oh.
おいさん
That's what he was repeating over and over. He said, I'm sorry. I had a gut feeling. There was no longer a need to hurry. I could hear the chirp of the Higurashi spilling in from the open window. I should have been able to hear them this entire time. I just wasn't paying any attention. Why did I focus on them all of a sudden? Were they trying to tell me something? Only the Higurashi knew. That's how I felt. June, 1983. In Hinamizawa, a remote village near Shishibone City, there was a murder involving 2 female students. The suspect is Keiichi Maibara, aged... The suspect called over his 2 female classmates, Reina Ryugu, Mion Sanazaki, to his house, and beat them to death with a metal bat. The scene of the crime was the suspect's room on the 2nd floor of his house. The inside of the room was covered with a significant quantity of splattered blood. There were signs of a struggle with the victims. In addition to the scene of the crime, the entryway, living room, and kitchen all had traces of a struggle. Because of the day he swung his bat wildly around. At the entryway, the shoe rack and wall had evidence of being impacted by a strong blunt force. It is believed to have been the same bat as the murder weapon. Having no traces of blood, it is believed the destruction occurred before the murders. There is the possibility that the suspect overpowered his victims to keep them from fleeing. In the living room, the rug had been pulled back, then thrown aside. Started to believe that this had a connection to the struggle with the victims, and thus the reason for this remains unknown. That was after they broke into a house and was looking for things. In the kitchen, the garbage bag was torn apart and its contents were spread out on the floor. That was from Keiichi trying to find the needle. Garbage was strewn about in the surrounding area, and handprints believed to belong to the suspect were discovered. It is believed that the suspect had for some reason taken out the garbage and struck it with his fists. The reason for this remains unknown. In addition, there was a note stuck to the fridge. The words, "Was there a needle?" were written on it. The meaning behind this remains unclear. Just in case, the garbage was searched, but a needle was not discovered. Though the garage door was functional, it had been left open ever since the suspect moved in. The garage door was found closed. The suspect's fingerprints were discovered on the garage door. The reason behind this remains unknown. The the suspect fled the scene of the crime. However, a patrolling officer in Namizawa local PD found the suspect collapsed inside a phone booth. At the time of discovery, the suspect was unconscious in critical condition. He was rushed to the local hospital for treatment, but did not regain consciousness and died 24 hours later. The results of the autopsy indicate that the immediate cause of death to have been hypovolemic shock. It was determined that the suspect had clawed at his own throat with his fingernails, and the resulting bleeding caused his death. With the similarity to the death of Tomitaki-san the prior week, the police believed there to be a connection and have opened an investigation. However, due to the wishes of the local authorities, it will be a confidential investigation. Due to the abnormal nature of the death, it was suspected that drugs were involved. As with Tomitaki-san, no traces were discovered. What prompted all this remains inexplicable. As such, this case is being treated as an act committed on impulse. However, with several accounts of the suspect's bizarre behavior leading up to the incident, it is possible that this was premeditated. Separated from his group of friends, isolation, inexplicable behavior. Several days before the incident, the suspect began carrying around a metal bat. The suspect was observed displaying aggressive behavior, as well as talking to himself at school. His classmates have actually heard portions of what he was saying. 2 days before the incident, the suspect declared to his parents the possibility of his death. Due to these circumstances, the police have begun an investigation on the possibility that this crime was not committed on impulse, but was instead planned several days in advance. Afterwards, a note was found in the suspect's room that he had written himself. The note was written on 2 sheets from a B5 college ruled notebook that had each been torn in half, and as if trying to conceal it, was stuck hidden behind a clock on the wall. The context was written in the appendix. The police believe it to be strongly related to the incident. The police changed their line of investigation based on the possibility that the suspect was involved in some sort of incident himself. However, no further clues were found, casting doubt on the credibility of the note. Was the crime impulsive or premeditated? Yeah, the syringe was never found. With this situation unclear and no further developments, the case has been labeled as unresolved. However, the following year, suspicion arose regarding the nature of the note. The note was not written on 2 halves of B5 paper from 2 separate sheets. It was originally a single sheet of B5 paper. Okay, so they found the note. In order to erase several lines from the middle, someone had torn them out. Judging from the size of the letters, the missing section is estimated to be 2 to 3 lines. It's highly probable that the person who eliminated the lines in question is not the suspect. In addition, judging from traces of large quantities of cellophane tape being stuck to the back of the clock, speculation that something other than the note was stuck there has arisen. I see. The person who first discovered the crime was a detective rumored to have a connection with the incident, Kuraudo Oishi. He underwent voluntary questioning but denies involvement in any damages to the note. The suspect's note. I, Keiichi Maibara, am in fear for my life. I do not know why they are after my life. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Yashiro-sama's curse. Reina and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. This is all on the first sheet. The section below this has been ripped out. This is from the second sheet. The section above this has been ripped out. I have no idea why it has become like this. If you are reading this, then I am probably dead. Though you may or may not find my body. You who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. So someone did find the note on the clock. That wasn't enough, huh? So were his parents actually in on it? All cast review session has become available. To play, select extra on the title menu and then pick the all cast review section. Huh. That's crazy. Because that would have to be it, right? Because it would make no sense, right? For the people who broke into his house to think about the clock. Why would they think that something is hidden behind the clock? The only people who should have known about the clock are his parents. Unless, prior to the police investigation, the Sonozakis and their committee or whatever questioned Keiichi's parents themselves, before the police got involved, they mentioned like, oh, he mentioned something about his clock or something. But I don't think that's something that they would bring up then. Or maybe they would. I don't know. So they already said in the police report that he had mentioned, that he thought his death was going to happen, right? But nowhere in the police report did it ever mention the clock. But his parents would think about that. I'm half tempted to believe his parents are genuinely in on it. That it wasn't necessarily the Sonozakis pulling strings to get the parents out of there. They essentially told the parents, make an excuse to get out of town and we'll take care of it. You make an excuse to get yourselves out of the village, go into the city, and we'll take care of it. As if the parents were in on it. So then when the parents checked the clock, they realized just how much their kid knew and took away the syringe and the middle portion. So then that begs the question, who would have ultimately injected him? Who would have ultimately injected him then? Because clearly he did get injected, right? Because he ended up clawing his throat out in the phone booth. Did someone manage to get him before he managed to get into the phone booth, right? They didn't need to actually put hands on him. They just need to get close enough to inject him. So by the time he got to the phone booth, he started dialing the number. He was already like starting to hallucinate. He was already starting to lose it. That's why like when Oishi answers the phone, he's like, "It was Oyashiro. It was Oyashiro-sama. It was them the whole time." And then rips out his throat and dies. I got to imagine that's the case. So yeah, that's the only conclusion I can come to with that ending, is that his parents were in on it. That his parents have known. That's why his parents wouldn't hesitate to let Reina in, because they're aware of Reina's involvement. Right? Maybe they were made aware of, what Reina's purpose was, right? If we go back to my theory about like how someone from the village is like matched with these like detractors, right? And if they're not able to like pull them back in, they have to be the ones to take him out, right? Maybe they're aware of Reina's involvement in that situation. It's very interesting, very interesting. But I suppose we have the all-cast review session, huh? I assume this is going to be like the tea parties at the end of the Umineko episodes, a similar thing.
はい、日暮らしの泣く頃に水、鬼隠しをプレイされた皆さん、お疲れ様でした。いかがだったでしょうか。
That was pretty solid.
ちょっぴりでも楽しんでもらえたらとっても嬉しいです。ちょっぴりも何も、あんなすごいバッドエンドで終わられたらプンプンでございますことよ。
I mean, I'm not angry because I know the story is far from over.
プンプンなのです。今回の鬼隠しは全体の謎に挑む人たちが最初に通るお話。だから実質上のプロローグの位置づけなんだって。
Right.
そのプロローグがこんな凄まじいバッドエンドでございますの？
Because the story's not over, you stupid child.
でもそういうのってある。この最悪のバッドエンドを回避するためにプレイヤーさんが物語を模索していくのがこの作品の醍醐味だし。
True.
まだ始まったばかりですよ。僕は次のお話が楽しみなのです。
Rika knows what's good.
これからどんな話が待ち受けてるんだろう。レナは聞いてる？
うん。他のシナリオにはどんな展開があるんですの？
Yeah, that's a very. It's going to introduce another aspect of the story. Like, okay, that's very vague. Thank you.
今回の鬼隠しではひなみ沢で近年、例えばみーちゃんのシナリオではひなみ沢の古い歴史なんかが紹介されるんだって。
異常事態の連続ですっかりわかんなくなっちゃったけど、お社様のたたりってどういうもの？いや、そもそもお社様って何なのかあまり説明なかったからね。
See, that's the whole point. They don't explain it. Because you keep it nice and vague, then you can use it as this thing that like hangs over you, like this ominous thing that surrounds you.
よくは聞いてないんだけど、でもなんか嫌な予感。
I mean, it's definitely not good, that's for sure.
またしてもたたられそうな嫌な物語です。
I mean, most definitely.
ケイちゃんも大変だね。今度はどんなたたりにやられるやら。
でもどんなお話になるのか楽しみでございますわね。
いやいやいやいや、遅れてすみませんね。
やあみんな、お疲れ様。
お疲れ。あれ、ケイちゃんは？
ケイチ君はもう次のシナリオの台本読みに行っちゃってるんだよ。主人公だから大変だね。
あれ、残念です。ちょっとだけでも顔を出してくれればよかったのに。きっと喋るワード数が多すぎて居残りなのです。
Oh, I appreciate them calling that point out. That's probably because he doesn't have any character art.
前原さんのセリフだけで普通のアドベンチャーゲームなら全員分の量がありますからね。
That's great.
しかしケイチ君やレナちゃんなんか特にだけど大変なお話だったね。
大変も何も大体バッドエンドでございますわ。結局ケイチ君を襲ったのって正体は何なんだろう。
たたりに見せかけておいて実は人間の仕業ってのが僕の推理なんだけどね。
Uh-huh.
でもケイチは最後に謎の電話をかけてきていましたのです。
He was already hallucinating.
うん、私もあの電話はあの時点でケイちゃんは犯人は人間だと確信してたはずなのにさ。
おかしな電話でしたわよね。なんかお化けに追いかけられてるみたいな。あの電話だけだとやっぱり犯人って人間じゃなくてたたりなのかなって思っちゃうよね。
せっかくですから意見を出してみようじゃありませんか。じゃあ園崎さんから。
私は絶対に人間説。ひなみ沢の怪しい昔語りかなんかになぞらえて誰かが起こしてる人為的事件だと思うね。
Correct.
確かに毎年お祭りの日になると起こる連続開始事件なんて、
その連続開始っていうのも何かの昔語りの再現なんだよきっと。
私はたたりだと思いましたよ。
That's because you're a stupid child.
玄関で圭一さんが暴れたシーンとかラストの電話のシーンとかを見れば人間が犯人では説明がつきませんもの。そういえばとても人間の仕業とは思えないシーンだったし。
That's exactly what they want you to think.
僕はそれでも人間が犯人だと思うね。
Correct.
あの玄関やラストのシーンは追い詰められたケイチ君の被害意識からの妄想じゃないか。
Well, I think the last one wasn't necessarily the stress. I think that was definitely the first one. That or potentially the first one could have been Reina. Because we saw like when he has like the flashback to the grocery store, he's like, yo, I didn't notice Reina at all, but then like suddenly now that I think about it, there was like something right behind me the whole time, wasn't there? That I'm only noticing now because I'm actually thinking about it. So honestly, I believe Reina could have fucking snuck up behind him like that and actually dipped out while he started swinging wildly. Just because all the evidence we've seen of Reina is that she is incredibly stealthy. That the only time Keiichi ever even noticed her footsteps was when he was on like high alert, and he was like really listening for any sign that someone was out to do something. And that was like the only time he could ever catch her footsteps. So like the first one, potentially Reina. The second one, I think at that point, someone along the way that was chasing him, because I think like he even said during the dam site, is like there was no way he could outrun an adult. So I think at some point all they needed to do was inject him, right? All they needed to do, and maybe by the time he got to a payphone, right, it was already too late. Maybe by the time he got to the payphone, they had, the moment he stopped, right? The moment he stopped, if there was someone hot on his heels, the moment he slowed down and stopped, they probably realized if he was at a payphone, they couldn't quite like do anything to him. Maybe it'd be a bit more, if it's a payphone, it's probably in a more populated area, you would think. So maybe they just went with, we'll inject him and just have him go the same way. So by the time he's in the payphone, he's already delusional. Or maybe he even got injected before that, because like he said, he felt like there was something right behind him the whole time. And he assumed it was like the ghost, the shadow of Yashiro, right? But it could have just been someone who was one of his pursuers who was just hot on his fucking heels.
難しい言葉を使われてもわかりませんわ。つまり怖がりの圭一が見た幻だと言ってるのです。じゃああのシーンの正体は圭一さんの後ろにいた謎の気配は何なんですの？引っ掛けだよ、引っ掛け。みーちゃん、引っ掛けってどういう意味？
富武のおじさまが言うようにさ、あのシーンは追い詰められたケイちゃんの被害妄想のシーンなんだよ。
Yeah, something that had genuinely no connection to the other things going on. That's kind of what my initial thought was.
それを濃密に書くことで、プレイヤーにたたりだと思わせようとする演出なんだよ。
Yeah.
だから引っ掛けってわけ。
それを言われると、
まあそういう可能性もあるってことだよ。
だとすると犯人は複数で村ぐるみっていう劇中の大石さんの推理は正しいのかな？当の本人の大石さんはどう思いますか？
私ですな。悩みますね。
あれ？僕はてっきり大石さんは人間説だと思ってましたけど。
劇中の私は犯人は人間だと断じてますが、人間が
例えば大石刑事さんの推理を聞かせてください。
まず人間が犯人だとすると絶対に動機が必要なんです。こういうことをして誰が得をするのかってことなんです。
つまりおじさま、人間が犯人なら連続開始事件を起こすことによって誰かが得をしなくちゃいけないってこと？
Well, I think that much seems kind of obvious. Is it not? Is it too obvious? I don't think so. I don't think so. This thing, like, it seems obvious, so you think like don't go for the obvious option, but then we gotta remember the card game. The card game that they played. She's holding up two cards. Which one is it? And you think, well, that one's the obvious answer, so it can't be that. But it was that. So maybe because it seems too obvious, that means it is the right choice. But I think there is something genuinely to gain. This group of people behind the murders, right? If we follow down this theory, they're trying to keep people from detracting from the village and bringing more harm to the village, right? Because the initial, like, that's the whole thing about the director being the dam foreman is like, that definitely throws a wrench into things. But if we think about that incident, right? It was done to protect the village and protect people's homes and whatnot in that village, to keep the village from being submerged, and displacing all these people. And then from then on, so then the question is, why did it become a regular thing? Because then the next one to go was someone who still supported the damn project, right? So they're like, no, we don't want any support. We don't want to show any support, anyone showing any support for this project. The less people show, or we need to like send a message that anyone who does support this project, will face dire consequences. So that's essentially what that message sends. And then kind of the inverse was shown with the third murder, where it was like, if you're not willing to put in work for the village, if you're not willing to genuinely help out, then that message also needs to be sent. If you're very like, on the fence, not sure if you're really part of these things, willing to step up for it, then you have to go. And by that point, I mean, even by the second one, it's become such a pattern that they just have to continue it, because then otherwise it stands out. Otherwise, the curse no longer holds its weight if all of a sudden they stop. Which is why... Well, no, the next one would have been the housewife. And see, well, that probably connects back to... So, like I said, by that point, the pattern is established and they need to keep up with things. So by that point, then you have Satoshi, the older brother of Satoko, whose parents were the second ones to go, asking questions like, what the hell happened? What happened to my parents? He starts digging a little deeper, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, we need to get rid of someone this year. And they see him digging into things, trying to expose the truth behind the matter. So like, all right, you're next up, bud. And then the same thing happens with Keiichi. This new family moves in, and well, no, because next was then Tomitake. And they see Tomitake snooping around, he's taking pictures, he's, on the night of the Watanagashi, he's, explaining, the whole string of things going on to Keiichi and whatnot. So all of a sudden he's spreading all this, he's spreading all this information around, potentially causing more issues. So then the next, thing they go for is like, we got to get rid of this guy. We need to get rid of someone. And so they had someone matched with him, because already there was this outsider who was causing problems. So they put that Takano lady with him. So I think there's plenty of motive behind the actual chain of mysterious deaths. And I think if we look at Keiichi, the problem with Keiichi is that he was not only digging into information, he was way too close to the police, right? He had that direct contact with Oishi. And that's kind of like what was pissing his friends off, right? With Reina and Mio, and it was like, you are directly talking to that man. You are feeding him information. I think the thing to consider that kind of throws some questionability towards Oishi is like, at the school when we confront Mion, she says some shit like, I should have never spared that man, right? So I'm very interested to see like where that comes into play. But I do think, as so far, there's plenty of motives behind everyone's death, right? I think initially, this committee, the secret society or whatever, came together to protect the people who had, caused the damn foreman's death. Though obviously if that guy's alive, makes it very difficult to consider what the hell actually happened. Unless the damn foreman himself was a plant, right? And like that all was staged just to like scare people off. And then now they have to continue this fucking pattern to make shit happen. There's a whole lot of ways this could go, right? There's a whole lot of ways you can twist and alter this theory depending on the new information we receive. But ultimately, I feel like there being this secret society behind it all, the motive makes sense. So I'm interested to see what other loose end Oishi wants to point out.
そういうダム開発の関係者が死ぬうちは利害も感じられましたが、近年の犠牲者はそれとも無縁です。
Right, the recent victims weren't related to that, but I feel like at that point, they have to maintain the facade of the Watanagashi and Oyashiro-sama's curse. Otherwise, then the villagers themselves start to suspect something. The villagers themselves are no longer willing to believe in the curse if all of a sudden it stops. If all of a sudden, I think, and then even the police will start to suspect something, right? If like, oh, so for 3 years in a row, or for at least the first 2 years, it's people connected to the dam that are dying. There's a clear pattern there. But if year after year you continue this thing and point at it and say that's the curse, and say like, oh, all these people who are dying have no connection to each other, so clearly it's just all at random. It's the work of the curse. There's no real connection there. Then you're able to throw the police off the scent. Well, not just off the scent, but out of the loop as to who's being targeted.
第一、前原さんを殺して誰が得をするというんです？
The people committing the murders. The people committing the murders benefit from that because he has all this information and has a direct line of contact to the police.
なるほど。そう言われると僕も弱いな。
How is it weak? I think there's plenty of reasons to kill off Keiichi. Because he's digging in too deep, he has a direct line of contact to the police, and there is not near enough time to wait for another festival to come back around. Like, what do you mean?
だってお金とかも取られてはいないんですもの。人間が犯人なわけありませんわ。
That doesn't fucking make sense at all, you stupid child.
でもそうとばかりは限らないんじゃない？さっきみーちゃんが言ったように何かの昔語りの再現そのものに意味があるんだとしたら。
To try to cover up their previous crimes.
そういうこれは営利殺人じゃないんだよ。きっとこれは村の血塗られた歴史を再現するための何らかの儀式的殺人じゃないかなって思うわけ。
I think it's kind of both. There are typical motives involved, but then it became this ritualistic thing so that they have this supernatural scapegoat they can pin it on. So they can be like, we have no involvement. It's the curse. It's the curse, my guy.
では聞きますですが、それを再現すると誰か得をするのですか？
The people who enacted the initial murders.
得をするんじゃなくてもっと心理的なもの。僕は何かの復讐じゃないかと思うね。
Keiichi's murder specifically? Because if you're talking about all, I mean, kind of, you could see it in that way as an act of revenge. Revenge for, detracting away from the village, for potentially harming the village, I guess.
土着的な何か。今回のシナリオでは語られなかった因縁だよ。
なるほど。過去にひどい扱いを受けた暴家の人たちが先祖の恨みを晴らすためにってな感じですか？
A member of a repressed family looking to air out an old grudge of their ancestors. Maybe. Because once again, like they said, maybe it's a connection we haven't seen yet with this initial first chapter. Maybe a theory like this makes a lot more sense once we read some later chapters. But from all the information I have right now, I don't quite see that.
私はそれにも反対ですね。
で、
じゃあ何？ 大石さんはまさかたたり派なわけ？
そうですわそうですわ。刑事役の大石さんが言うのたたりに決まってますわ。
劇中で前原さんが言うように、お社様が竜宮さんや園崎さんに乗り移って悪さをしているってか、一番辻褄が合うんです。
You're trying to play games with me. Oh, well, that fits the evidence the most. Isn't that the most obvious choice of what happened, right? So once again, I'm trying to go back to like the card game where it's like, oh, don't disregard the most obvious option because there's a chance that could be the option. You're trying to fuck with me. Trying to fuck with me.
残念ながら。
実はあんなに優しかったレナやミーちゃんが突然おかしくなるなんて、そうじゃなきゃ説明つかないもの。
I mean, with Reina, it makes sense because she's like, there's some mental instability going on there. There's some mental illness involved with Reina that could cause her to snap like that. That's why she was being manipulated in the way she was. And with Mion, I don't think there's a mental issue there. It's just her having to, accept her role in whatever position she has in this secret society, to where she like locks in and is just like, all right, well, I have no choice now. So she just drops all her formalities, whatnot, drops her usual persona. It's just like, now it's business. I think just because there's things we're not seeing involving Reina and Mion doesn't mean they're not there. Obviously, as of right now, we have no evidence to really back that up. Just because I know that the Sonozakis are in a lot of positions of power doesn't necessarily mean that Mion is a part of it and whatnot. But clearly we do know that Mion is a part of it, because when directly challenged, she acts like she knows everything that's going on. When we point out like, hey, I know everything, she doesn't question like, what are you talking about? She, is upset because now she has no choice but to go forward with everything. I feel like there's plenty of other explanations behind that.
そこはミオンの私が言うのも変だけど、やっぱり私なんだと思う。
ミーの話の説明が欲しいのです。
ああ、ごめん。つまりさ、これってすっごく残酷な話なんじゃないかって思うんだよ。
See, I can believe that.
それってひょっとして。
突き詰めるとそうなるのかな。僕もちょっと疑ってる。
つまり竜宮さんも園崎さんも実は本当にああいう性格で、引っ越してきたばかりの前原さんを騙している悪魔なんだと。
I don't know if it's quite deception. I think that Oishi's right that they both had those personalities, but I don't think it's deception. I think it's merely a fact of like, with Reina, I believe it probably is something closer to, I don't know if it's quite MPD, but something similar, some kind of mental disorder, to where she can be manipulated and have her beliefs, used against her. But like with Mion, I believe like both personalities are both parts of the same person, right? It's not like one side is a lie, one side's an illusion. I believe they're both the same part of the same person, but depending on the circumstances they're forced into, that determines like how they're going to act. In their everyday life, they're still like the cheerful person, the cheerful outgoing person, but when they're forced into like to do business, right, that's when we see that darker side of them, which is just as much a part of them as their cheerful side. I think the same can be said of Reina as well. There's different reasons for why there's the two sides of them, but both sides make the same person. I don't think one side's necessarily an illusion.
こういうわけですか?
そんなの嫌ですわ。
Shut up, child. Shut up.
これは全部タタリの仕業なんですのよ。
Can it,
レナ
child?
さんもミオさんもみんな優しい、いい人がいいのですの。
Shut up.
レナもそうだな。
Hush.
レナやミーちゃんって本当にいい人なんだって思う。
See, now I agree with you there. I do agree with you. But just being good people at heart doesn't mean you're not capable of doing some, what's the word I'm looking for? Doesn't mean you're willing to do some intense things, let's say. Not necessarily evil, right? Not necessarily bad, but like you're willing to cross some lines, right? Just because you're a good person at heart, because I do believe like Reina and Mion had Keiichi's interests at heart. They didn't want to kill him. They didn't want him dead. They were trying to look out for him and hope that they could, integrate him into the village and he wouldn't have to be the next one on the chopping block. I do believe they were actually looking out for him and had his interests at heart. I do believe they're good people that do look out for their friends, that do care about their friends and their family and the people they're close with. I do believe that. That doesn't mean that they're incapable of crossing the lines when they're left with no other choice. Or like in Reina's case, when she's manipulated into believing she has no choice. And with Mion's circumstances where she just truly has no choice, and because of her position and her family's position, whatnot, she's forced to do some things. Just because you're a good person doesn't mean you're an innocent person, right?
きっと劇中で出てきた厳しいシーンは何かに取り憑かれてたんだって思うの。
No.
レナもタタリ派か。じゃあタタリ派の皆さんにお聞きしますけどさ、タタリが怒るからにはそれなりの理由があるんでしょ。無差別にたたるとは思えないな。
True.
そこんとこ説明できるの？
タタリはタタリで人間の考えでは想像もつきませんわ。
擬人化された神様という存在は結局は人間の生み出したものなんだよ。だからその考え方も人間に理解できるようにできてる。ギリシャ神話の神様を見てごらんよ。泣いたり怒ったり嫉妬したり、とにかく人間的なんだよ。
つまりお社様もまた人間同様に何らかの利害に基づいてたたりをしてい
That
る
is true.
ということですか？
Even if you consider the other side of things, if it is just a curse, why are they being cursed? What did Keiichi do to deserve being cursed? Right?
変な言い方になっちゃったけど、つまりはそういうこと。
触らぬ神にたたりなしって言いますからね。
Never heard that phrase before.
一理あります。
つまりお社様にせよ人間にせよ何
Correct.
か理由があるはずということなのです。
Regardless of whether you believe it's curse or human, there has to be a motive behind the things happening.
でもリカ、その理由がはっきりしないならどうなりますの？
That's why we sit here and we think about it and we theorize.
つまりはわかんないというそうだね、まだプロローグだもんね。
Also true. If I had all the answers right now, it wouldn't be a very interesting story now, would it? Even if if some of my theories prove right later on, if by the end of the first episode I'm like, oh no, I know everything, I can piece all of this together, I don't need to see the next 7 chapters, then it'd be a pretty shitty fucking story. Having theories that are later proven right is one thing, but just coming out the gate being like, I mean, it's all obvious, I pieced it all together, there's no room for error, I see how everything connects, I got it all,
明かされていないことがたくさんあるだろうし。
correct.
そうだね。現時点ではこれ以上の推理は難しいね。
いんにゃ。
Oh.
白黒つけないと納得できないな。
ミオンさんもこだわりますのね。
限られた状況で最ちょぴり部活感覚で面白いでしょ。
True.
そう考えれば面白いかも。
じゃあ整理してみましょう。ワットミタケさんは人間派でしたよね。
ええ、僕は人間が犯人ってことでいきます。
私も人間犯人。もちろんタタリというファンタジーは嫌いじゃないよ。だけど今回の事件に限ってはタタリの線は薄いね。
人間派が2人で、リュグさんはタタリ派でしたよね。
はい、レナとサトコちゃんはタタリ派です。レナさんやミオンさんのことを悪魔みたいに言う人の方がよっぽどタタリに会うべきで。
そりゃあまあ、私も自分の部活モードの時にはクールでなきゃ。感情論だけで選ぶと大やけどするよ。
まあどっちを選んだっていいじゃないですか。
あれ、リカちゃんがまだだね。
This is true. This whole time, Rika's just been kind of like, prodding both sides. She hasn't
ど
said
っちだ
anything.
と思う？僕はお社様が悪い。
あれ、面白い意見だね。
たたってばかりの悪い神様なら祀るのは嫌なの。僕はたたるよりご利益のある神様の方が好きなのですよ。そっか、リカちゃん、いい意見。
じゃあ何？リカちゃんはお社様じゃないって思うならやっぱ犯人は人間って思うわ
She
け？
didn't say that either. She's purposely being vague about it and not picking a side. She's saying, I don't think Oyashiro is evil and is doing things out of vengeance and more so out of looking out for the village and whatnot. But she's not saying whether Oyashiro, the curse, is actually the, act of, the supernatural deity or the act of human perpetrators.
そういうことにしますのです。
Yeah.
ありゃまあ、票がざっくり分かれましたね。タタリ派と人間派で半々ですか。
What did the test players who played the beta version think? Well, of course, that's just going to be people's natural inclination. Like, obviously, I'm a bit more inclined to think that, especially after playing Umineko, right? Where, like, they try to explain away, the massacre with, like, it was witches, it was magic, it was demons. But in the end, that was just the stories people came up with to try to explain away what happened. And in the end, the truth, or at least what we think is the truth, because one thing I love about Umineko is the fact that you're never actually, like, spoon-fed the actual truth. From what I've heard, this game has a much clearer ending and a much clearer resolution. But that's what I love about Umineko is the fact that you don't get the truth, because part of the story is that you, an outsider, are not supposed to get the truth. That's not your obligation to know. And I love that about that story. But, like, obviously coming from that story, reading that one first before getting into this one, I'm much more inclined to be like, it's not something supernatural. There's got to be a human explanation behind it. And I'm not really willing to give the supernatural side even the benefit of the doubt. Our veteran comrades. But the beta version only finished partway through the story. Ooh, you didn't get the full story.
どうすんのさ。これじゃ意見は半々。決着がつかなくて面白くないよね。
裁判官が奇数なのはつまりそういうことだからね。
Keiichi!
あと一人意見が欲しいな。
We need Keiichi!
あ、ならケイチ君本人に聞いてみない？電話で。
We're gonna call
取
him.
り殺された本人の意見
How
は貴重
convenient.
ですよ。
He doesn't have character art, but hey, someone grab the phone.
そうと決まれば早速電話ですわ。もしもし、レナです。今お仕事お忙しいで。
ああ、忙しいぞ。シナリオが1本終わって一休みって思ってたらすぐに次のシナリオだもんな。
ケイちゃんどんな感じ？忙しいって？
うん、拗ねてる。
聞こえてるぞ、こら。お前ら打ち上げ会でいいよな。俺も出たかった。
収録の残りゼリフ数で僕たちの誰か一人でも抜いたらケイチも参加。リカ、あの量でそれは不可能ですわ。あ、今回のシナリオでケイチ君、犯人は誰だろうねってそういう話。
つまりさ、 ケイちゃんを殺したのは人間かお社様のたたりかってことで意見が分かれちゃってるのよ。
本当にごめん。台本読みで忙しい。ケイチ君はどっちだと。
そんなの決まっ
どっち？
どっちなんてもんじゃねえよ。
Ah, of course. We need an odd number of judges. And he goes, it's both, stupid.
村の怪しげな奴らに狙われて、さらにお社様とかいう怪しいのにたたられて、人間もたたりも全部、これは何かの嫌がらせか。
かわいそうかわいそうです。今度頭をなでなでしてあげますですよ。
That's great.
結局意見が分かれちゃったね。
私ももう一度考え直して見落としがあるかもしれませんので。
それでは引き続き日暮らしの泣く頃に水をお楽しみくださいね。
Oh, I'm so ready for it. So is there going to be like a question mark event with this one? Because like with Umineko, there was the tea parties, but then there was the question mark events, right? Because depending on if not, I might just jump into the next one right away. I got time for like an hour and a half. I mean, that seems to be it from what I can tell. I saw the tips. I did the all cast review. There's not like an extra thing popping up. In fact, let me just check to be sure, right? If I shift tab here, it's not actually showing me. But no, let me pull up Steam real quick. Let me pull up Steam in regards to the achievements, right? Because if I've seen everything, that means I should have all my achievements, and I do. And I do. So that is it. That is the end. So then I guess I'll cut this recording here. This will be a separate episode, separate video, I mean. So that way, when I do start chapter 2, it'll be a completely new video. So I'm going to wrap up this video here. I'll get started on chapter 2 right away, because why the hell not? I got a spare hour and a half today. So I think I'll do just that. So for now, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Till then, peace.